and welcome back to episode 19 of the Boxing Social Podcast in association with Betfred. With me, your host, Rob Tebbutt. Before we get started today, just like to remind everybody that the Boxing Social Podcast will be available to download on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And if you haven't already, please like, comment, and subscribe. So this week, unfortunately not joined by Adi Oladipo doing some real work with TalkSport, but I am joined by former WBA super-middleweight champion of the world, George Groves. George, nice to see you. How are you keeping?
I'm good. Good morning, Rob. Thanks for having me on the show. Sorry, I moved today, didn't I? I'm late, and then someone better couldn't show up. So don't worry, you got me.
Well, we've been trying to get you on for a little bit of time now, but obviously, retired life and sitting with your feet up and smoking a pipe is a little bit more time consuming than potentially we thought of.
No,
so.
It really is. It really is. Like, I mean, it's tough when people say to you, "What have you been up to?" and you got to really think about what you've been up to. But I'm just taking it slower. I'm just taking it a little bit slower without no deadlines, nothing to really get too stressed about. But my days are busy. I'm not itching to figure out what to do. You know, I haven't taken up any time-consuming hobbies either. I mean, I don't know how guys finish and then play golf or something like that. I just don't have the time. I don't know where the time goes.
Yeah, I mean, you always find like these people say, "Oh, I'm busier now when I've retired than I was when I was active." You never really struck me as the type of guy to be like that. I remember it feels like only yesterday. Obviously, the last kind of year has been like massively. You know, we've almost lost the year, really, everybody with the pandemic. But it feels like only yesterday I was at your house doing the retirement interview after you'd retired, and I thought, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if we don't see an awful lot of George Groves in boxing after that. But what have you been doing apart from, as we said, sitting up with your feet up, smoking your pipe?
Yeah, I mean, as I say, like the pandemic, the restrictions, the lockdowns, all that stuff's got in the way of everyone's sort of plans. So not an awful lot is happening there, but. I got a small family. I got two young boys. One started school, so that I do the school run. That's quite fun. Meet some new parents. I'll try and get in the gym from time to time. I don't do any boxing training myself, but I do some coaching now. Some friends more than anything. I try and get down the Dale Youth on a Sunday. I haven't been yet since the last lockdown, so I need to get down there on a Sunday morning. That's good fun. We got sometimes the TV work comes up, podcasts like this, it's good fun. So that's how I like to dip my toe into boxing, you know, just stand on the sidelines and tell people how to do their job. Do you know what I mean? That's 6 feet down to the ground. I do get that feeling of you know, when you're in the gym. So I met up with Shane the other day, and was over in Don Charles's new gym in Finchley, and I watched Daniel Dubois on the pads, who he's just started working with, and obviously Lawrence Okoli, who's just now another world champion underneath the guidance of Shane. So luckily for me, I got no itch to get back in the ring, but I do like, as I say, stand at the side and saying, "Wow," you know, because me and Shane, we spent that last period of my career together. Like, a lot of our boxing ideologies, I think, are in sync. So the way he coaches would, you know, the vast majority of it would be in line with how I would coach. So. Yeah, I'm like, don't say nothing. You're interfering. Like, I feel like a dad, you know, a dad telling his kid how to do something. But but that was good fun. You know, just being in the gym and watching the guys train. So I don't want the responsibility of actually being a coach. That's hard work. You know, Shane just keeps getting bigger and bigger guys as well. His shoulder's going to be broken in a few years' time. I don't fancy that. So that's how I'm dipping my toe into boxing. But it's good. Good.
We were going to talk about Shane and Dubois slightly later on, but we might as well talk about it now, seeing as you've brought it up there. Yeah, I think one or two people, myself being one of them, were kind of talking about, you know, he's coming off the back of a loss to Joe Joyce. I wouldn't quite go as far as to say it's a rebuild job, but it's something like that, and not massively dissimilar to you coming off, obviously, a slightly higher level or a much higher level against Badu Jack. But when you joined Shane, good fit for Daniel Dubois going to Shane McGuigan at this stage of his career?
I think so. I think Shane's a world-class coach. He's got a vast level of experience now. He's worked with numerous champions, many different fighters who have, you know, just started in their pro career, and fighters who are a bit further on, like I was when I hooked up with him. And I think Dubois, it's a good move for him. You know, he's a big guy. He's got all the attributes to become a world champion. I believe that. But I think it'd be a good. It will be a good time for him to work with someone else who might give him some different ideas and show him something else, a different way of looking at the game of boxing. So, sometimes trainer fighter relationships sort of run its course and they come to a natural end. I don't know about Dubois' circumstances, but maybe he just felt a change would do him good, and that might be the case for him right now. But I think being in a gym with Shane, and he's rubbing shoulders with real good fighters, winning fighters at the moment. Chris Billum-Smith's just won the British Commonwealth title, but he might be challenging for the European. Obviously, Okoli's in there, world champion. Anthony Fowler's in there doing great things. So, he's in a winning environment. That'll suit him real well. And maybe the pressure will be off him a little bit, being in the gym with another world champion. Whereas I felt like he's sort of the poster boy of, BT boxing, BT sports at the moment. And, just having that pressure on young shoulders in the heavyweight division is tough. He's had to learn on the job real quick. Obviously, everyone's interested in heavyweights right now, and he's, people are excited about him being the next generation. But yeah, working out in the McGuigan camp, I think, will be a real good move for him. And I'm sure he's got a fight next weekend. He's going to be picking up another belt, a ranking fight, pushing him towards that world title level that I know he's going to be capable of. So I'm excited for it. I'm really, really excited to follow his journey.
Now, we caught up with Shane McGuigan and Daniel Dubois a few days ago. Keep your eyes peeled to Boxing Social this week. That will be available on Boxing Social's YouTube and social channels, so keep an eye out for that. Always have to get the plug in where possible. From your experience of working with Shane, obviously you mentioned that going down to Don Charles's gym and watching the sparring. What would you like to see from Daniel under Shane, and what do you think Shane will be able to give to him and implement into his style?
Well, he's a huge puncher, Dubois. Massive puncher. But I think there are quite a lot of his games of his style that can be improved upon. Defenses can be a little bit leaky. He looks like at times I wouldn't say he's got a lack of concentration or switches off, but it's just having that little bit more switched on approach. And there'll be, I think there's a lot basically that Dubois can improve upon, and that's not a slight on him. It just shows you how good he is with the tools he's got and how good and how great he can become. So I'm looking forward to seeing that journey. It might take 12 to 18 months before some of them implementations really are evident. But for a guy his size who punches as hard as he does, there are a couple of little things that could be added to his game that makes him a force for the entire fight. Whereas I feel like maybe a little bit at times he's not as dangerous as he should be for the entire fight. I don't want that to sound cryptic, but
That makes sense.
at the same time, there's a lot to break down, I suppose, in terms of a fighter, especially one that I don't work with. So it'd be a little bit disrespectful to go into too much detail. But yeah, it's exciting because he is just the potential of a guy like that. I think it's exciting.
Before we move on, I just want to backtrack on something you said there about coaching. Being on the sidelines and kind of having a look is one thing, but do you ever think you'll ever dip your toe in and become an actual head trainer, a lead trainer? Do you think that will ever happen for you?
I always try to never say never, Rob, and it'll probably be just whether you can be in sync with the person. Do you know what I mean? Again, with Shane, I've seen him have tremendous success with fighters, and then I've seen when they've parted ways and it's been a bit brutal, so, and that's the same with numerous trainers and fighters up and down the country. So getting emotionally invested in someone, which has to happen when you take someone on a journey. I don't know if I'm ready for that yet, but as I say, sitting at the side, maybe with pipe and slippers, as you said, giving my 2 cents might be worth it. I'd like to be the number one assistant coach in the world. That might be good. Does he show up on time? Maybe. He'll be in the corner somewhere. That would be me.
It's all like Josh Pritchard.
No, but yeah. I mean, Pritchard's would be a lot better than me. I want to be that guy. with like 35 seconds left of the round, Shane turns to me and goes, "What do you think?" And I'll say,
Okay, so moving on, we've spoken about your ex-trainer, Shane McGuigan, now your ex-stablemate, Josh Taylor, the new undisputed super lightweight champion. Now, you've watched the fight now. We sat down and watched the fight and went through it this morning before we got started. Just first and foremost, your immediate thoughts, your initial thoughts on Josh Taylor's win over Jose Ramirez.
Amazing. Excuse me. What a thing. You know, there's a few things in boxing that you don't really compute, and one thing that I see this in build up to this fight was that I think there's only 6 people in history who have held all 4 belts. You know, since there's been 4 belts, and I was scratching my head for a little while, going, that's all there is. So what an achievement. And we know, you know, you can see it obviously right now in the heavyweight division, the politics that gets involved with your mandatories and other fighters who, you know, jostling for position. It is very difficult for one guy to come out with all the belts. We saw Usyk do it at the end of the Super Series, you know, Series 1. And Taylor came out, you know, in Season 2 with 2 belts. So fantastic performance. He dropped Ramirez heavy, real heavy. And the fight was kind of his, I felt, from then on. You know, Ramirez is a fantastic champion. I thought he was winning the first half of the fight up until the knockdown. Great, you know, tenacity, work rate. And, you know, he comes, you know, he'll throw his shots, and even if he's sort of semi out of position and gets countered with that first wave, he sort of drops back once, and then he's back in on top of you. So anyone like that, it's a tough night's work if you've got a fighter in front of you who, you know, has that style. But he got dropped heavy both times, and the second one was like where he switched off. You know, they come in close, and Taylor shouldn't be able to generate that much power. You know, he's kind of standing upright. He's not sitting on the shot properly, but he just rolls the uppercut up right on the button, and you can see Taylor's gone. Ramirez is sort of out of it for the rest of the, you know, the round finishes pretty quick, but even the next round, as you pointed out, you know, he's not quite with it. Kenny Bayless, referee, did give him as much time as possible, but Ramirez, to his credit, you know, he's fighting back hard, and in the last round, even he's pushing the fight. He knows he's probably down the cards now. He's going to have to go for it. So 2 tremendous fighters, brilliant fight. That's what boxing's about for me right now, you know. And it's not necessarily about the best fighting the best all the time, you know, and seeing all the belts on the line. You can't get that. That's like, as I say, it's only ever happened a few times in history up until this point. But these are 2 guys who are not heavyweights. They are skillful, talented, dedicated fighters. In an interesting division. You just look at Josh Taylor's career so far. You know, when I meet amateurs, I say, right, you want to turn pro. This is the average parameter. You want to be a domestic champion within 2 years. So that means British Commonwealth, and you want to be fighting. You want to be a world champion within 4 years. Or if the politics don't run quite that favourably for you, you want to be ready to be good enough to be a world champion within 4 years. And some prospects scratch your head going, 4 years, that sounds like nothing. But it's like, when you think about it, you turn pro at 20, by 24, the best guys in the world are world champions. And Taylor's fitted that bill. You know, he's dedicated to sport. I know that firsthand being in the gym with him. He's been willing to roll the dice and take the tough fights. You know, he hasn't stormed through the guys in front of him. You know, you've got Ramirez the weekend. He was, I think, 114, 112 was it, the scorecard. So it was a close fight, you know. The Prograis fight was a close fight. I thought he was up against it in that fight as well. I thought the first half of the fight, it was Prograis' fight to win, and, you know, it was his fight to lose, and then Taylor sort of bit down the gumshoe, had a good round and sort of broke his heart a little bit. But he's had a tough career, even, you know, right the way through, been willing to take them calculated risks, push himself, and it's paid off. You know, it's paid off, you know, in dividends. So, you know, I'm really happy for him, over the moon for him. You know, it's a tremendous feat.
Before we discuss further your kind of personal experience of Josh, obviously you've known him for an awful long time. You mentioned you got that first-hand experience. Going back to the fight, You mentioned there about the knockdowns, particularly in the 7th round, was a very, very heavy knockdown, that short uppercut. A lot of discussion on social media about Kenny Bayless's performance. With regards to the knockdown and the extra seconds to survive, you've been hurt in fights, you've been knocked down, you've got up, you've carried on fighting. How crucial are those 4, 5, 6 extra seconds when you're hurt like that in a big fight?
Well, I mean, it's kind of impossible to tell, like, because, sometimes the fight is as good as over. So when I'm around my friends, fighters, and I tell them, look, just hit them with something. Just hit them, don't look for that sweet shot. Come in, behind the feinting and the twitching, keep the guy in front of you's hurt. He's buzzed. He might not be able to focus on you properly. He might not see the target in front of him. But if you're jittering and fainting in front of him, then he knows something's coming, then hit him with something. I used to try and aim high and just hit him on top, above the ear, on top of the head, not trying to aim to that sweet shot on the chin. I wouldn't go for them mad uppercuts like Canelo does and stuff like that because, you might get a highlight reel finish, but you might let the guy off the hook because you're trying to go for an uppercut and he manages to avoid it and grab hold of you. So them seconds are vital. I think in the second knockdown, there was only 10 seconds left of the round, and Taylor did jump on him, but just didn't have enough time to finish him. The referee, they probably did give him a touch on the extra side, but that's part and parcel of boxing. I wouldn't say it was downright out of order liberty. It's just he's up. Everything within his rights he did as a referee, and it might have bought Ramirez a couple of extra seconds to clear his head. Might have made a difference, might not have. But same point, to Taylor. Like the next round, you want maybe in the 7th. Would he go down the 7th? So maybe
6th and 7th, and then the
6th and 7th. So 8th, maybe if he jumped on him a little bit more. Tried to finish him, but it might have just as much emptied the tank a little bit too much. It was a physical fight up until that point. As I say, I felt Ramirez was probably edging the rounds, and Taylor don't really want to gas out when he knows that Ramirez is falling over the front foot at times and walking onto his counter, his counter left hands, and even inside he's switching off and getting caught with uppercuts. So I think it was astute from Taylor at that point. Knowing that the guy in front of him's fit, but at the same time, maybe he's going to really only be the person to know. Like maybe after you'll be thinking, I could have put my foot on the gas a little bit more and got rid of him because he did look cooked. He looked baked. He was spent at that point. But it's tough, man. It's tough in the moment. It's real tough, and you only got to make them educated guesses. And who's to question Taylor? As I say, up until this point, he's rolled the dice time again, and he's always come up, trumps.
Final one on that, you mentioned about Ramirez switching off ahead of that uppercut, and it really kind of happened in a flash. Before you knew it, he was down and down heavily. A lot of comments again on Kenny Bayless. Did he come in to break them? Was Ramirez, looking to be broken up by the referee? What was your kind of viewpoint on that situation?
I watched the fight on mute, which because I don't like the biasness that sometimes creeps into your own psyche when you're listening to commentators.
You about 30 seconds to mute it, didn't
it? Well, I watch most boxing on mute for that reason, just because you can't help but be quietly cohosed by what's being said. And that's no slight on the commentary. It's just it'd be the same for me whether it was anyone. So. The only downside with that is you don't get to hear the crowd, the bell, the referee, the fighters talking to each other, anything. So I didn't notice anything there. It kind of had that feel, but maybe it didn't. I don't know. It was a sweet shot, as I say, to generate that much power that's from that position just shows what a great uppercut Taylor has. So Taylor comes out in the southpaw stance, and he always leans outside the guy in front of him jab. So when he's up against someone orthodox, he doesn't dip this way, towards the back leg to let his left hand go. A lot of the time he'll come in and he'll it's almost slowed down. He'll drift outside the jab. He does it really well. It's kind of, I think he gets away with it, one, because it's a bit audacious. It's a bit much, it's a bit risky, and most fighters probably not expecting it. But it just gives him, he's got so much thinking time at that point that he comes outside and then comes across, comes outside, comes across. And it just gives you that feeling of a fighter who's just super comfortable being that close range, being in the pocket. And the reason I think he has that conviction in that head movement is because he can generate so much power in those short dip that comes with an upward shot. In this case, an uppercut. Terrific shot. Ramirez goes to get up. You can see that he's not familiar with his surroundings. He almost stumbles getting up. Big shot, and that's where the appreciation for Ramirez comes in, that he recovers from that shot. It might take him the rest of the round and stretch to the next round, but he's back in the fight after that.
Just going back to what we were discussing a minute ago about you kind of being around Josh and having that first-hand experience. Do you remember the first experience you ever had with him?
Yeah, not the very first, but I said earlier, I remember the first time I see him fight, it was out in Vegas, and it was on the Frampton undercard. I'm sure it was Vegas. I feel like I can't remember Frampton fighting in Vegas and me being there, so it might have been when he... it wasn't...
So he had his debut on the Frampton Gonzalez undercard in Texas. Could it have been then?
No. So I didn't go to Texas. Yeah. That was too soon for me. But he was only had a handful of bouts, a couple of bouts. I mean, still only had a handful of bouts, but he had a couple of bouts, and he was in there with, an American club fighter, which, so their journeymen are a lot better than sort of our journeymen because they are fighters, But he made this guy miss with every shot, and he hit him with everyone in the book, and I was like, wow. So he jumped out the ring, and I would obviously I've been out there and I said, come on, I want a selfie. I got a selfie with him. I need to find that selfie, because even then I was like, he's a special talent, and he wasn't the one out of that current crop of prospects who people were really talking about. But it's who, I said it when Taylor won the belt. McGuigan's team, they're very good at discovering and nurturing talent, whether that's, I'm not sure who spotted Taylor first, whether it was Barry, who saw him and said, we'll have him, Shane, who then, guided him along the way. They're in a good gym. Frampton was on top form. It was a winning environment, so he developed real well. But had it tough a little bit as well, which I think all prospects kind of needed when they want to get to the very top. You don't want to mollycoddle these guys or make it a little bit too easy for them. You don't want them to stagnate. You got to kind of test them. Sometimes it might not always be tests, in the ring. It might be, right, we're going to send you out for sparring. When I was coming through, at times I felt like I was shipped off to go get some sparring. I go out there. Many times I was with Adam Booth, and I went out there without Booth, and I'd spar the guys, because that's how you develop. That's how you get better, So even if the purpose wasn't necessarily for you in terms of, but for me, it was like, this isn't to suit me, this is to suit someone else. But you have to take and absorb those experiences and process them yourself and learn from them, add them to your artillery, and improve. Stand you in good stead.
What was Josh like around the gym? Kind of being a stablemate with him. How was he around the gym on a daily basis?
He's like full of beans, full of energy, so much energy. Do you know what I mean? He'd do more shadow boxing walking from the train station to the gym than I would do the entire camp. Do you know what I mean? And I say, Josh, stop doing that. It was terrible shadow boxing. I'm sure what you're saying. It's just, it's like a nervous tick. It's like, that's not real. So I would do, if I was going to do something, I'd do it properly. And because you can't necessarily go all in on, throw real shots in shadow boxing, because you end up hurting your arms and shoulders and stuff, then I just shy away from it. I just practiced the stepping round, a few defensive movements. That'll be enough for me. Hitting the bag wasn't for me, but I know he used to love whacking the bag. Super fit, loads of energy. I don't know if he's ever been diagnosed with anything like ADHD or something like that, but that was how you describe him. He's very, antsy, but got spite and menace that all the attributes you'd want in a young fighter, he had there and then. and now he's just took it to the top level, and he's operating there. And now it's, the next stage for him, I'd imagine, is dealing with being the champion. Having to be wise. Make the right decisions. He's willing to make the sacrifices. I know that. He's from Edinburgh, but he'd be down living in London. Living out of hotel rooms and stuff like that. Eating on the road. Living in the gym, that sort of thing. Dedicated to his craft, leaving his family back home. So yeah, he's got all the attributes to become the best in the world. He is now the best in the world. I think the next phase of him is learning how to be that person and deal with it and stay hungry and just carry on making them improvements, because everyone's improving. You gotta maintain.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that came out of his post-fight interview with Andy Pacquiao. Was his well, actually, we'll show you. We're going to throw into now to see our clip of Josh Taylor just after he beat Jose Ramirez to become undisputed super lightweight champion. He spoke to Andy Pacquiao out in Las Vegas.
I'm delighted to be joined by the new undisputed super lightweight king, Josh Taylor. Josh, firstly, how does it feel to hear those words?
I don't know. It's not sunk in yet, but that sure sounds good. Undisputed world champion. I'm not surprised. Without sounding big-headed, I'm not surprised that I've done this and achieved this. I've worked my absolute backside off to be in this position, and I just knew I was going to win.
Josh, yourself and Jose delivered a fantastic fight for the fans and for the neutrals, but being in the ring, how would you assess your performance and your win?
I thought it was a great performance. I actually think I could have made the fight even easier by boxing and using my range and my boxing ability. Sometimes I closed the guard and let him fire off a little bit more than I should have. But overall, it was actually quite a comfortable fight. So yeah, I think I boxed a great fight. I outfought him and I outboxed him.
So that was the new undisputed super lightweight champion, Josh Taylor. What we spoke about beforehand about having, the target on your back now. You're the number one guy in the division. No questions about it. He's the man at 140 pounds. And we just saw there with, he's not finished. He wants to improve. He didn't think it was the best of him against Jose Ramirez. Could have made the fight easier for him. Obviously a slightly different route to get into the world title that you had compared to Josh. But still, becoming world champion, achieving your dreams, and that next stage of your career is so important when you've got people gunning for you and coming to knock you off that perch.
Yeah, no, it will be. There'll be fighters indoors, I'm sure, who are in and around, the elite level of his division and be like, I can beat him. I can see weaknesses, I can see frailties, I can see openings, I can see this, I can see that was me, that was who I was, that's what I used to do, and there'd be every other prospect out there doing the same. So it was he scored 2 heavy knockdowns, the judges' cards at the end, 114, 112, fair and reflective of the fight. So it's it might not be the very best Taylor, and I'm glad that he sees that. But he should go away with review, be proud of his performance, perform brilliantly against an elite level fighter. So it's good to be tough on yourself. But there'll be some sort of learning curve on that trip anyway. So he's out in Vegas, as a main event. Done his camp out there. I know a friend of mine, Dan Lawrence, who was my first, not my first strength conditioning coach, but a strength conditioning coach of mine before I started working with Shane and being with Taylor. Now he's working with Taylor. He was out there for a month, so that. Taylor's making the right choices in that he's trying to bring the very best guys in outside of, just the boxing team as such. He was out there for a solid month for acclimatizing and preparing, but still it's different. It's different boxing, out there in the States, dealing with the jet lag and all them other things that come into play. So good on him.
Now, one of the things that you also share and have in common with Josh is, of course, the World Boxing Super Series. Both of you went through that tournament, you, of course, in Season 1 and him in Season 2. Just how beneficial was that for you in your career? And obviously, of course, for Josh Taylor, we mentioned that he's only had 18 fights. Now he's undisputed champion. But going into the series, it kind of puts you into that slipstream to go, right to the top, right for all of the belts. How important was that for you in your career and in hindsight for Josh Taylor as well?
Oh, well, it's totally different in that, I'd become world champion. I went into my category as the number 1 seed, whereas Taylor was, went down in there still as a prospect. I think he ended up being sort of on the seeded side, but really...
Seeded 2, I think, behind Prograis number 1.
Yeah, but because I think that one of the belts might have been vacant at the time, but he could have gone in as, one of the unseeded fighters if they'd managed to get more champions in there just for the sort of status of where he was at then. So for him, it was going to be a fantastic chance to win a world title. To get 3 high-profile fights back to back within 12 months, come out of it with a belt, get paid handsomely, and the world's your sort of oyster. Whereas for me, it was like, what a fantastic retirement plan! It's like, and I'd signed into it. I was like, I'm gonna beat Chudinov. I've got to beat Chudinov. Like I can't die. I can't leave this world without beating Chudinov. Like it's gonna have to. It's gonna happen. I would. My world had changed at that point. I'd become a dad, and boxing wasn't the primary goal. It wasn't what I cared about most. I'd had the upsets of losing 3 world title attempts beforehand. Came from. Just being rock bottom, and then actually no, this is a new rock bottom, and then this is another rock bottom. It's like we're on the rebuilding stage. Let's get it done. And then this tournament talk come up, and I was skeptical of it. I didn't know if it would be real. I didn't know if it would come off, but it did. We realized, wow, this is real. And all the negotiations for joining the World Boxing Series was actually before beating Chudinov. So I've said it time again, but the difference between going in with a world title, beating Chudinov, being number 1 seed, and the rewards that went with that, as opposed to going in there without and then hoping for the best. But it was a safety blanket in many ways that I was going to be challenging for another world title possibly without having to wait in the wings and trying to claw my way back into a position to fight for a belt. But it was just a retirement plan, to be honest. I was like, right, 3 fights, 12 months. This is great motivation after finally winning a world title, when I usually probably wouldn't want to get out of bed. I'd be like, I'll just live off this. But I got to be honest, still wanted to earn a few more quid. And I didn't care who I had to fight for it. I said to the guys, just get me the money. Just get me pay-per-view money. Whether I have a pay-per-view fight or not. And it was like, right, okay, cool. So we got in there, we got that, and I didn't care who signed in. They could have put anyone in there. I was always like that, but and that hadn't changed. So I was like, I'll fight anyone, just make sure I'm number 1 seed. And now I'm just gonna be obnoxious and boss it from the front, and and be like that. So it was great for me. Obviously, it stretched out a little bit longer than 12 months because of the dislocated shoulder. But did get to that point even then because it was a tournament format. It did change a little bit. I was like in the semi-finals against Eubank. I was like, I could really go and try and put on a showstopper here, but it's like, nah. We went on points. This is good enough for me. Save a little bit. We got a fight again in a couple of months, and then the shoulder blows out in the last round. You're like, it would have been handy if I tried to stop him 4 rounds ago. I had a shoulder left. And then just being like, in realistic terms, like, okay, you can have a rest now. You're world champion. You've just been paid. Like, you just had 2 big paydays. You can have a little rest. Come back. In fact, we'll aim for 12 months, maybe 18 months. You'll be back. We'll do some deals. Make sure you keep the belts. Right you are. I was like, no, I'm not missing out on this final. I'm just going to have to push hard, campaign for it, because this was the last fight. This is what I wanted to go out on, win, lose or draw. Even to the point where the day was flying out to Saudi Arabia, I was like, I don't want to go to Saudi Arabia. Like, I really don't want to go there. It's not as exciting as Joshua and Eddie and Tyson try and make it out to be. It is not. So I just, And like, should I go? Should I not? Just go, man. Get it done. You regret it if you don't. And I still happy. You know, got beat, got stopped. You know, it's another loss on the record, but what do I care? Do you know what I mean? I went out there, I gave it a go. Win, lose or draw, that was going to be my last fight. So totally different perspective, I suppose, between me and Taylor. That was like the doors that were going to open for him. Whereas for me, it was like, fucking finally shut all the doors. They're done.
Okay. Right. Before we move on, just final words on Josh Taylor. What would you like to see for him next? By all accounts, it looks like it's going to be the Jack Catterall fight, a kind of homecoming for a mandatory. But let's just push that to one side for 1 second. All due respect to Jack Catterall, who would you like to see Josh Taylor tangle with in the next 12 months?
Well, this is a test of my wealth of knowledge in the lightweight division, and all the ones that I know he's already beat. So, I think he deserves a homecoming fight. You know, and maybe the Jack Catterall fight would be a great fight for him. You know, I think
I'll help you out. People are talking about him moving up to 147 for Terence Crawford. People also seeing Teofimo Lopez at 135, who's been saying that he wants to face the winner of Taylor Ramirez, which obviously we've seen. So I think the two names floating about, aside from Jack Catterall and that big homecoming, hopefully at Edinburgh Castle or Easter Road, is Teofimo Lopez moving up or Josh Taylor moving up to box Terence Crawford.
Yeah, if I was advising Taylor, I'd say stay away from the Crawford fight. You don't need that fight next. You definitely don't need to win all the belts, then move up a weight and fight the pound for pound. You know, is he the best fighter in the world right now? He's definitely top 3. So you don't need that. You know, not to prove anything for your legacy as such. Make a defense or two. If you can still make the weight, make a defense or two at lightweight. See what the money involved is for the Lopez fight, you know, because there's always, you know, you beat him convincingly, brilliant, but it's always going to be, but he's a lightweight, you know. So I know he's a huge lightweight. I know he's struggling to make the weight, and he's definitely the best lightweight out there right now. But I'd like to see him box some of the other lightweights out there if he can before moving up. So yeah, get rid of the mandatory for now. And then I'm sure he's got a lot of ambition and to go up to the welterweight division and win some big fights there. There's some big names, but again, I'd go up and have a couple of fights against the top guys, before you fight. You know, a Crawford or a Spence or even a Pacquiao. You know, so he's a huge Pacquiao fan. Taylor, his
dog was called Manny.
Manny. You know, so I don't know if he'd ever bring himself to fight Pacquiao, but yeah, it's exciting times for British boxing fans to seriously get behind Josh Taylor now, because he could go down as, you know, he's the best Scottish fighter that's ever lived. He will be, and he might end up being one of the best British fighters we've ever had. So, you know, and if he goes up and he's involved in the mega fights at welterweight, then, you know, that could be who he becomes. But for now, come back, you know, have a defense, maybe a Jack Catterall, which won't be an easy fight. It's a fight he's definitely got 100% be switched on for. But it'll be a nice homecoming. Hopefully, one of the big TV networks get behind it and broadcast it. And, you know, I know he's from time to time he gets up to a little bit of mischief, but we keep his reputation clean cut, suitable for the masses to digest over breakfast, and he will be a star in the making, and good for British boxing because he's not a heavyweight, and heavyweights are boring. You know, he's just a genuine talent. You know, in a real division where all the other fighters are brilliant. So it's good. It's all good.
Okay, well, that's all from George Groves this week. Coming up next, we'll be sitting down with former WBO super featherweight champion Barry Jones for his views on this weekend's fight between Ramirez and Josh Taylor. See you soon. I'm joined now by former WBO super featherweight champion Barry Jones. Makes his triumphant return to the podcast. Been a little while since I've seen you, mate. How are you?
You had a go off. Did you use that term? That was a big term when I was a kid. You had a go off.
I've never heard it. What's a go off?
You go off with other people.
Speaking to your mic, you've been away for that long.
Well, you've had someone else here who's a bit too big. That's
Yeah.
what it is. That's the problem. If he was like a normal sized human,
Well, it's all right for you to slag George off now he's gone, mate. He's-
I avoided him like the plague, didn't I? I don't know what it is. I promised that he was doing this podcast thing, and it was really
into
interesting.
the mic, Barry.
He was doing this podcasting, and it was a really interesting concept. And he phoned me, and I said, "Of course I'll do it, George, because it's like George is there every bloke. Why wouldn't you do it?" And then, yeah, things just life gets carried away, and he messaged me a few times, and you got George Groves chasing you, like, you know what I mean? Like, it was embarrassing, and yeah, and so I thought I don't want to see him just in case he goes, "Nice one." I'm chasing you for, like, you know what I mean? Like, but yeah.
You say to him that your loyalties lie with the Boxing Social podcast. Although I did see that you did some live watch along stuff with Seconds Out. How was that?
250,000 views we had.
Was it good? Did you enjoy it?
250,000. All to come and see me. It's crazy, isn't it? I just don't realise my sex appeal. I thought it's not me. I don't. What can I do? I can't
You're
see you now.
talking here.
But
Don't
I
you
can't.
need to- that's it. Perfect.
I can't see
There
you.
you go.
Who am I
There you
talking
go.
to?
You need to look over.
I'm talking to. I can't look over because he's too tall.
That's okay.
There you go.
Have we got a cushion for Barry?
Actually, I need a cushion, an inflatable one, because my piles are killing me. But yeah, so that was it.
Okay, right.
It was really good anyway.
What was really the
The
Seconds
watch
Out?
along, which still freaks me out. I don't understand the concept of it.
Yeah, it's good. Like we've wanted to do. The problem is like by the time that they're on, when they're late at night, I'm usually pretty knackered
Yeah.
and delirious and hopped up on coffee, and I'd say some stupid stuff.
I didn't know what it was. When they said you want to do it, I said, "What? I don't understand it." So they explained to me, and I still don't understand it. So people watch the fight, and then watch the fight, and what? It was just, yeah. I thought I'll do it. I could, I'm a slag, and I'll do anything for money. And then thought, who's gonna watch this? This is just weird. You got Ali Drew, myself, and then this big giant, Fox. I was going to say Chisora's kid, Don Charles's boy, yeah. And I thought, who's going to watch that? But yeah, they had loads, massive views.
Okay, well, that's enough promo for Seconds Out. Shout out.
It was really good.
Seconds
Though.
Out
What I
and
liked
Danny
most the Seconds Out was
Shut up. So, anyway, moving swiftly on. Well, not moving on, but looking back this past weekend, I've just had George Groves in here, who you know because you avoided, talking about Josh Taylor. Now, we sat here about 8 weeks ago, and we broke down Josh Taylor versus Jose Ramirez. And I think the one thing that everybody was in agreement with going into the fight was it was going to be a great fight. And I think that's what we saw on Saturday night in Vegas.
Yeah, we did. And it's great to see that high quality and desire. And guys willing to do anything to walk through a wall to win, and that's what it was for both of them. To be fair, I think they both boxed really well, but just Taylor just knows too much, and he's tough. He's too tough, and I think him being nasty and dirty, I think caused Ramirez too much trouble. I think he thought he was going to be. He might have been the physically stronger of the two inside, but he wasn't expecting headbutts and elbows and and being pushed on the back of the neck all the time. The referee was poor, I have to say. I don't like to criticise referees too much because it's an increasingly hard job, but he just wasn't very strong. For both, actually, to be fair, but especially for Ramirez, he had the blunt end of the stick for it, I feel, because Josh got away with a lot of stuff. But it's not Josh's fault. You just got to do what you got to do. But I think people underestimate Josh, how tough he is. I think they think he's, as a persona, being tough. But I'll get inside and I can push him back. But you can't. Keeps his shape, keeps the elbows tucked in tight. He's hard to hit clean when he's in close. And if you do it to him hard, he automatically fires back. He does what great fighters do. And you can't teach it. Now, when they're hurt, and Josh gets hurt in every fight, I feel. In every fight almost, he gets buzzed. They maintain that level of excellence still. They don't look panicked or worried or have to rally. They just carry on like they're not hurt. Though you can see they are hurt. You can almost see their legs wobble, but they carry on. It's the weirdest thing. I don't know how you do it. Because I know every time I've been hurt, my first thought is, how do I get out? Not out of the ring, well, sometimes. But no, how do you look to protect yourself, to regroup and come back and try and win the round or whatever. But they don't think like that. And Joe Kazagi, those fights, they just had it. And and for me, that's a sign of a great fighter, that they can do that under any circumstance, can just keep that focus and maintain that level of brilliance. And he was just brilliant. The two shots the two knockdown shots were just unbelievable class. How he made space for that uppercut so close. I know the referee helped him by tapping his glove, almost to say go, but just up so close to generate that space. In the middle. No, you can do it. But in a fight like of that magnitude, in the middle of what's going on, to find that space. It's just brilliant. And the first knockdown, a little shimmy of the shoulders, and then come back with that short left hand in the end because Ramirez was coming onto it. Was just nothing short of brilliant.
And we heard from Josh Taylor after the fight come out and say that, as much as Josh Taylor is, in fight week, he does become a different beast. As soon as the days go by, the closer and closer he gets, he starts off the week saying, I'm cool, calm and collected, and then it slowly slips and slips. But he said after the fight that he was trying to get into Ramirez's head. He wanted to bring Ramirez onto him. Do you think we saw evidence of that? Ramirez being maybe a little bit reckless, and as you say, Josh, just kind of knowing a little bit too much?
See, I think, there was lots being said about Ramirez starting fast. I understand that, but I think he should have started fast. I don't think that was a bad idea. I think you start fast and because you don't want Josh Taylor to get into he's a rhythm fighter, get into his rhythm, get some momentum and all right. You want to get yours early, so you put it on him straight away. And also you tend to think that people who go all that bravado, on fight week, tend to really be masking some sort of frailty, maybe or maybe confidence. Not the case with Josh Taylor. But some people do that, they exude this alter ego of lunacy. In reality, they're shit scared inside. And why wouldn't you be? It's a danger. Fighting's a horrible thing, as much as you enjoy it. But Taylor's not like that. So I understand why Ramirez started fast. So I'm going to put it on him, only get him his rhythm. And if there is a crack in his makeup, I'll find it early. Because one thing to do is hard to change the rhythm of a fight. It really, especially the fight that they could have had, and they sort of did have, but there could have been a real war of attrition. Could have been worse than that, physically tough. And Ramirez would have enjoyed that more. And if you start off doing that, and it's at your pace, then it's harder for Taylor. But he just come up against a guy who has very few flaws in Josh Taylor. He's Canelo's the most complete fighter in the world. I'm not saying Josh Taylor's the second best on the planet, though you could argue maybe, but he is, again, he might be the second most complete fighter. He's not the best dancer. He's not the best in-fighter. He hasn't got the best jab. All these bits, all these things he can do them all brilliantly, but he's not the very best at either one of those. Like Canelo's not the very best at either one of those, but combined, as a full unit, as a full package, they're as close as they get as the seal of being the best. And he's just perfect in almost every way. I love him.
Is he your new? Is he your new Roman?
He's not been new. I've been a big fan. Maybe. I've been a big fan for a long time. I went on Facebook and I seen his missus put like my man,
Daniel.
And I was like, she put my man, done it, and I was like, oh, hang on, love, my man, your man. You might sleep with him and all the rest of the stuff you get on with. I don't know, but he's not your man. He's my man.
You be careful if she's watching this.
I saw him first, but he's brilliant, and I'm glad that he is where he is. He deserves it because the run of fights he's had, he's been brought on, and you got to give the McGuigans a lot of credit. The fight that gets all the credit and all the praise. Whatever happens, the fighter's the one who's fighting, so you got to get all the credit, all the praise, most of the money, and that's how it should be. But the others, people around him, should get their plaudits also, and the way the McGuigans brought him on. Shane with his training and Barry with the way they managed him tough. They matched him tough. But that's all you should when you have a guy who's a brilliant amateur, who looks like he'll transition to the pros really well. Mm-hmm. And I think maybe Buatsi's people should look, and maybe we should have done a little bit of, not maybe as tough, but we should have done a little bit like this with Buatsi. I think he is one of those who can be brilliant potentially. But he's been matched perfectly. Every fight has been a step up. Every fight has been a different puzzle to prove, to solve, and to show that you can do it at that level. Because he had some risky fights. Even O'Hara Davis at that time, looking back, no, it was always going to be a fight that Josh was going to win. But at the time, O'Hara Davis was a huge guy for his weight. He was basting everyone out. He was a bully, and he was full of confidence.
He was a favourite in the fight.
Yeah, and you could see why maybe. But Taylor just the way he beat him. That was the start of it, really, for the wider public. The way he beat him, he didn't outbox him like you thought he should have. He went right down his chest and bullied him and beat him, but made him quit. And then the Postal fight was brilliant because Postal's only lost to Crawford, not just lost his world title to Crawford. And I think what was it? Maybe the fight before or two fights before, something like that. And goes out and has a hard fight
I think he'd had one comeback fight, Victor Postol. I think he boxed in the Ukraine, but other than that, it was the fight before against Terence Crawford.
Postol's a nightmare for anyone. As Ramirez found out himself, you know. So it just proves out that
I think that was Taylor's 12th or 13th fight, or
it's
something
just
like that.
it's stupid, isn't it? Like, it's stupid. I thought I had a decent apprenticeship in relative terms, and I did, but compared to his, it's laughable. No, it's just. But I think no fight was too much for him. That's what I'm trying to say. No fight. It wasn't. They didn't rush him to where he had to get to. It was just the right fight at the right time because they knew they had something special. And some fighters you've got to give them 30 fights to learn their trade, and some fighters maybe we learned off to do well. And other fighters where you rush them a little bit too soon. Maybe or maybe not. See, when you take a fight that's a risk, there's a risk of losing. So when you lose, everyone goes, it's too soon. It's not too soon. You took that risk and it didn't work out. Don't mean you can't regroup and come back. And that could have been potentially with Taylor. Don't mean he couldn't get to where he is now, but it just means that you have to learn from that fight. But he was lucky enough that he has that special talent to win by all costs. Even Baranchek, that was a great fight and a hard fight, and he got hurt again in that fight. But again, but they're all things that you can look at it and go, he's got hurt. Ooh.
What did he do when he got hurt? Oh, he did this.
Oh, he got hurt. You're right until he got hurt, but you go, he got hurt, but he still found a way to win. And getting hurt is not a problem. Really, I mean, you don't want to get hurt. You'd look for the whole career not getting hurt. It's great. Getting dropped is not a problem. You don't want to get dropped. It don't mean you haven't got a chin. A big shot drops you because it's a big fucking shot. But it's how you react. Like you said, it's how you react, how you get on. If you can get up and carry on winning a fight and get up and not get phased or get buzzed and knocked, like he hasn't been knocked down, and know how to cope with it and carry on. That shows the people around you and yourself that whatever situation you're in, however bad it is, you're good enough to find a way to win. And I think he showed that like way before this fight.
You mentioned there about certainly the short uppercut that dropped Ramirez in the 7th round was a beautiful shot. Ramirez, I mean, I didn't think that he would go much longer after that. I was very surprised that he was able to survive the 8th round and then onwards. Josh Taylor's inside fighting. I think it was a couple of fights ago a certain Andre Ward had some things to say about Josh Taylor not being able to fight on the inside. I wanted to know your kind of thoughts on the little things that he was doing against Ramirez, just the nudging and the nurdling and finding those little gaps to work. How difficult is that to do and how difficult is that to defend against?
Well, to defend against is a nightmare because you set your feet to throw shots, and then when some guy hits you with a shoulder or sticks an elbow in your chest, they're creating space to throw their shots. But by doing that, it's either they're doing stuff so if they badge you with the shoulder and they hit you with the right hand, so you're here, your natural reaction is put this hand up, then you get hit here, or they block they block that shot that you throw and they throw the same hand, and so then you're exposed here and they take away what you're good at, so that you're not throwing back. And he gets his foot on the inside, so he gets his foot on the outside, but when he's working inside, he gets his foot on the inside, so he's inside your body frame, and he gets low, Taylor. You see how low he got a few times, and that's the important thing. When you're in close, you got to get lower than your guy. So you're inside. So when you do come up, because you're inevitably going to come up at some point, you're inside. His guard is almost, so your elbows tucked in, but it's almost like a V, like this, if you like. I'm over-exaggerating, but he goes low, he comes up, and he splits you wide open. It's not quite like that, but that's easy to explain. He gets inside, he can split you wide open. But if you're here, squared on, it's easy to see. You're easy to punches to block. It's hard to block punches that are coming up on a different angle. And he gets lower. He gets a nice wide stance. And he gets that, and sometimes he gets that foot inside, so that means you're punching on the outside. When you're long range, you want your foot on the outside to be able to punch over his lead hand, especially when it's a southpaw and an orthodox fighter. But when you're inside, you want your foot on the inside, in the middle of his stance. So you're right in the middle of him, and then you got all that inside belongs to you, and he's got to punch from the outside in when you're close up, and that's harder for them. And he does it naturally, I think.
Bit of a lost art, isn't it?
I couldn't fight inside, so I'm talking bollocks. But you learn enough to like, so when you can't fight inside, you've got to learn enough to know to stop the other guy fighting inside, enough to get away. But Josh is a guy who fights inside when he's being aggressive. He also push you back. He can push you back when he's working inside, like he did so well with O'Hara Davis. But against Ramirez, it was a different thing because Ramirez can't fight inside. No, we fight the same someone like a Davis, for instance. I don't want to keep going on about him, but he couldn't fight inside, so he knew if he got inside, he was the boss. But against Ramirez, it was a risk that you tend to think that was his game. But I always thought, I hope we mentioned it before, that's when Ramirez is going to get shocked, because he think that's going to be where this is how he wins the fight, and he's going to find Taylor really hard to move back from there.
Yeah, that's what we said. We also sat here and said there was no way Teofimo Lopez could beat Vasyl Lomachenko and one or two other hot takes. But on that in particular instance, yeah, it's something that we did say. You know, I always felt that Ramirez would be shocked at Josh Taylor's ability in that mid to short, his vision and his catch and counters and being just slightly more compact and a little bit sharper than Ramirez would have expected. I thought that going into the fight, Ramirez would want to get in there and make it a dogfight, but would be very, very surprised at how good Josh Taylor is on that inside. And I think that's what we saw. That catch and counter right hook that Josh Taylor throws is such a beautiful shot. It's so compact. It's short. He lands it on the button. His accuracy against Jose Ramirez at the weekend I thought was fantastic.
And he's spiteful. He's not a one-punch KO artist, but every punch he hits, he punches correct. Every punch he hits, you feel it.
And he keeps the power. This is something that Shane McGuigan, of course, now his ex-trainer, had said to me on several instances, that he keeps the power through his combinations. It's not like when he lets them go, he lets them go with each shot, and each shot hurts. We did an interview once with Anthony Yiggett, who, of course, boxed Ivan Barancek in the World Boxing Super Series and also had boxed Taylor as an amateur, and they'd done a lot of sparring together. And he said that for one punch power, Ivan Barancek was the hardest he'd ever been hit. He said it was like being hit by a cannonball. But he said that when he sparred and fought Josh Taylor in the amateurs, that each punch was like being speared, and he said every single shot that he hit you with really hurt, whereas Barancek would hit you with one big shot, you'd see it come in, you'd brace yourself for it, but everything that Taylor threw was so short, and it was like being prodded or being hit by a spear, which I thought was such beautifully descriptive talk when you're talking about his punching power.
There's another fighter like that, Canelo. Very similar. I think he has probably a bit heavier handed than Taylor, but I think he's the same. Every punch he hits you is so correct that you feel it, you know, and when you feel a shot, it makes you tentative to throw. Like making people, there's a few things to can make you miss, like a Naz. I know Naz has tremendous power, but early in his career, though he always had tremendous power, he would make you miss and then hurt you. But making you miss makes you afraid to throw your punch, because especially when someone can punch, because you know if you miss, he's making you miss, and you know you're off balance and he can hurt you. But also when someone hurts you with every shot, you're afraid to throw. You are. I've been there. Like you get. You don't want your hands, because the safest place for your hands to be is your elbows tucked in tight and your hands around your chin. So if you can feel it on your arms and your chest and your top of your head, and you're thinking, I don't think I'm going to expose my chin and my nose or my ribs to anybody. Thank you. I won't throw any punches for this round. I'll have a round off and I'll try next round. You do though a little bit. And at some point you've got to take that step and try and win the fight. But they make you tentative, and then when you're tentative, when you have to overthink things, you get tense. When you get tense, your punch is shortened because your muscles contract. You've got to be relaxed, and that's where Josh maintains his power, I think, because he turns from the core with every shot, even if they're short. He punches correctly. He uses the shoulders. He punches from the shoulders. He's not an arm puncher, so everything's correct and right with him. And he's brilliant. I know he's not a fancy Dan sort of thing, so people tend to think, especially the Americans, will sort of overlook him because nothing's massively flashy with him. But he's so neat and tough and technically very, very good. I know he's one of the most complete fighters in the world today, without a doubt.
One of the things that I was quite impressed with, obviously we're going to come on to talk about the training situation, of course, the change in trainer from Shane McGuigan to Ben Davison, but one of the things that I was impressed with, one of the things that we've not really seen an awful lot from Josh Taylor in the past was that straight left hand, that southpaw backhand, which I felt really came into play in those middle rounds and really started to hurt Ramirez consistently throughout those middle rounds. I thought that was a marked improvement from what we've seen with the straight left hand from Josh Taylor in the past.
Yeah, the thing... You got to use what you got. I think that for me, I always felt that this was a fight where he had to be the very best, obviously, and so you have to use everything you got. And I think they've realised that there's weapons you have that you're not using enough that are good for you. And against a guy like this who wants to get 3/4 range or close, then a long left hand with your right foot on the outside of his left foot front stance is going to be the weapon that stops him from walking over you. That for sure. So that was what they obviously there's something that they've worked on, and they've studied him for ages, and it was successful, and it's nice to see. And you could double that shot up as well, see, from the southpaw stance. That's a good thing there. The problem you get with my old problem with Taylor is what makes him really good can also give you an opportunity to hurt, because every time he throws a punch, he's looking to go forward, and no, that's great, by the way. You'd rather that than the other way, but also against someone like Ramirez, my only little worry was that he thinks he's hurt Ramirez, who's tough in his own right, and then gets caught because he thinks I got him, and then goes right down, walks right onto a shot. Actually, it turned to be a little bit the other way, I thought. But if we're going on, we talking about trainers now?
Not yet. You can go on.
No, I'm not joking. No, I think the whole thing about Ben Davison was that I was worried that he was a new coach, and this was the other fight wasn't a real fight. The Kong Song, whatever his name was, that wasn't a real fight, and this was, and it's a big fight. It's a big thing to have a new trainer. I know they've been trained together for a while, and the layoff probably helped that relationship. But it's a new who has his own ideas of how to box. No, I wouldn't say massively dissimilar to Shane McGuigan, but enough of a difference to have a change, and to a style possibly. But he didn't tinker with Taylor. Hey, that was nice, wasn't it?
That was good, yeah.
Yeah, didn't tinker with him at all. I just think he left. He had enough confidence. Think I got a complete fighter here. He would have been foolish to try and do stupid things, to put his little stamp on him, to go, this is why he won, because I did this. And because remember, every trainer, like every boxer, has an ego. They have their own ambitions of their success, and also Ben Davison, as every trainer, is his own business. So if you win, and you win because you did something I taught you, or showed you, or we worked on, then other fighters will come to me, and I'll earn more money, and I can feed my family. So, it's not all about I'm just doing it for the fighter, for his success. You are, but his success becomes a part of your success, and understandable. But he never, I don't think he tinkered with him at all. He got him fit, and I'm not going to say he's a fitness trainer. He's obviously, he's proved himself now to be a fantastic trainer. And I think the fact that he never tried to do too much with Taylor makes him a good trainer. He put his ego to one side, I feel, for that fight. And said, no, who knows what, with other fighters, I don't know. But this one in particular, he said, he's gone, I got a fighter. I think, you don't know, maybe Taylor don't listen, or Taylor's gone, I'm not doing that, I don't know what's going on. But either way, he hadn't been messed about, and that was my worry, because all we've seen with Ben Davison is he seems like a thinking man's trainer. So, obviously, Fury was moving and boxed really well against Deontay Wilder the first fight. The other fights don't really count, because they weren't really fights for him. And he had Billy Joe Saunders. They were the two fighters we know he's really had, and at match, it's unbelievable, really. I think he sort of cut his teeth with sort of two world champions, like it's crazy, isn't it? But he's learned from that. But then that he would make Josh Taylor more of a mover and a thinker, and overthink what he tries to do. Now Josh Taylor thinks very quickly and reacts quickly, and I think that is something you don't want to mess about with. You want a guy to take stock and think about your work, and you've got to think about every shot, of course. You've got to think. You can't just throw blindly, because that's when people set you up for counter-attacks, and that's when you go get hurt. But I think Taylor has that quick reaction with his brain, that he thinks, where other people like Fury need to be a little bit more, I'll set you up, this is all working for me. A little bit more relaxed, and so he didn't do that, and I was more happy with that with anything else. Because Taylor was the same fighter there, for me, as he was for every other fight.
So it's kind of like Ben Davison kind of went into it on a little bit of a hide into nothing. I think if Josh Taylor would have lost to Jose Ramirez, which Jose Ramirez, a unified champion, was always part of the conversation that he could lose that fight. I think Ben Davison would have been torn down to the ground. And winning, we've seen people come out and say, well, you inherited an elite world class fighter, which is of course true as well. Yeah, but
it is true. I don't think he if he lost by trying to dance around, trying to box a different way. Because you could say, well, no, that's because you got Ramirez, you can't meet Ramirez head on, so you have to be boxing more, which is, I would understand that totally. And I think that would have been right, and I would have gone with that thinking. But if he would have totally tried to box and be really tricky and slippy, which I think Taylor could do, because Taylor's multi-talented.
The ability to do that, yeah, for sure.
And then lose, you took away all his magic. You made him look pretty. You took away all his magic, all that toughness, that real grit and toughness. I always say the Scottish toughness that made him that little bit that got him over the line against Prograis.
That bit of devil in him.
Yeah. You took that out of him to make him a prettier looking fighter. Now he's lost. That's your fault, and it would have been his fault. Well, Taylor I'll take the blame. You can't take all the credit and take no blame. It would have been Taylor's fault, but you would have pointed the finger at Ben Davison, saying, that's not a good fit. And then, are you really a good trainer? But he never did that. He knew he had a good fighter. He knew, as much as they worked on different things, obviously the long left hand and other stuff they must have worked on, of course, that we don't really, maybe didn't notice. But ultimately, he had a good fighter. It was a sort of a complete package. and just made sure he was spot on and made sure he knew what he was going to do at the right time.
Before we move on, we mentioned earlier on about Kenny Bayless. A lot of talk about him on social media about the time taken for the knockdowns and giving the additional time to Jose Ramirez in round 6 and 7. And of course, kind of much consternation about, was Josh Taylor punching on the break? Did he kind of maneuver an opportunity to punch when Ramirez wasn't prepared? Where do you stand on both of those points?
He didn't have a great night. No, I don't think it was enough. It's easy for me to say this. I don't think it was enough to have a massive bearing on the fight. But then, the knockdown could be. But I didn't hear what was being said. I don't. He looked like he just touched the glove. Well, he shouldn't be doing that for a start.
You see it sometimes with refs doing it to try and untangle arms, and they tap occasionally, don't you? But it's not common.
It should be verbal.
Yeah,
like it should be verbal. That's why if you have that's why they should be able to speak the language. That's why they have a Spanish-speaking judge. When if it's an English-speaking fighter and a Spanish-speaking fighter or whatever, you should be able to speak because you need to be clear with your instructions. But the touching really shouldn't really be in.
He looked a little bit in no man's land when the punch landed. I think there's the famous replay of it where Bayless's hands are like that and he's kind of gone back, and you can that doesn't look good in the moment. But of course, as we all know, it's protect yourself at all times. Josh Taylor kind of manoeuvred that little, and Ramirez, by his own regards, said he switched off for that 1 second and then was caught with a shot.
No, if I didn't hear, so if Bayless had said break,
which he didn't.
No, but if he did say break, then fair, and Josh throws a shot, and Bayless is too weak to pull him up, then you're going to understand Ramirez going, I want a rematch, because that was a massive factor, because the 8th round was more torrid than the 7th, I thought. I think he had a really hard 8th round after that, as you sort of already alluded to. But if he just touched the glove, how's he going to? He doesn't know what's going on. People are watching from the outside and looking for things to blame, especially if you're a Ramirez fan or family. You're going to look for things. I think, if anything, it was Taylor was pushing down the back of the head quite a lot and around the neck. I think that would have been an issue for me more than that. Ironically, I know that was a knockdown, but I would have gone, he's getting away with murder here, Taylor, because Taylor's a naturally dirty fighter, now, which is great for him. Like, he's fantastic. No, I don't think he tries to be. I don't know, who knows, but I don't think he works on trying to be dirty. I just think he's naturally one of those guys, because he likes to get inside, that he's in there to push you and pull you and elbow you and he hits you low quite often and gets away with it. And that's just how he is. Which, listen, what Roberto Duran did it.
I think I've been kind of trying not to say, but there was a lot of there'll be people who are watching this and going, "Oh, you can't compare the two."
I said Jamie Cox. He said Jamie Cox boxed in Ireland once against a guy who wasn't very good, and he threw a shot, he lifted the elbow up, and he come down with it, and I went, "That's a Golovkin type punch." Well, that was it then. That was it. Oh, you say he's better than Golovkin and all that.
But that loss, I was going to mention it earlier, that lost art of infighting, that buying yourself just that fraction of a second, and may not be of legal means, but it's not a tickling competition.
Andre Ward.
Exactly. Andre Ward. Bernard Hopkins was another one who was able to do that. But finding that little bit of that pocket of space on the inside, I'm going to say it, Roberto Duran was the master of the inside fighting and kind of manoeuvring little bits and pockets of space. And I felt like Josh Taylor did that as well as I see any kind of modern current fighter boxing on the inside and making that space to work. I thought he was fantastic at that on Saturday night.
I think it was everyone. We all try and we all do it. Complicate, whether you're a pundit, fighter, trainer, all trying to overcomplicate stuff. There's all new sayings now, and I don't mean they're bad, but no, we have new sayings for things now, and we're all trying to make boxing more scientific than it ever was before. But it's actually not quite scientific. It's your hands up and straight punches win you more fights than all this 35-degree movement to the left and then pivot on the front toe. And I say pivot more than any person's ever lived. Like, it's a weird. Like, I should be a ballerina. I say pivot more than anyone. But but really, we all try and overcomplicate things to make ourselves look clever. And trainers do it, and all the rest of it. But you can try to overcomplicate stuff, and then no one wants to do the infighting because that's not pretty, and it's not. You can't be sexy when you talk about it, because it's actually no trainer says my fighter's going to go right on his chest and he's going to elbow him, he's going to butt him, and he's going to give him hell. You don't hear that anymore. You used to hear that. Because we're all thinking about, you got to be outboxing, you got to use the jab, and the jabs. No one used to say the jab. And now in the last sort of 2 years, everyone's going on about the jab, because the jab's the most important weapon. But it's always been the most important weapon. It hasn't just. It feels like the jab has just been invented all over again. Like, it's like we've reinvented the jab. We've repackaged it. There must be the jab. That jab is it's always been there. It's always been the most important weapon to have, but not for everyone. Not for everyone. If you can't throw a jab, then it's no good to you. If you've got a super lightning jab and it comes back low and around your ankles, then it's no good to you. It's no good to you. It's good. It's a half a jab, because the other half just makes you exposed. So you have to work to your strength. So sometimes some fighters need to be dirty. Some fighters need to be nasty. Some fighters need to be don't do the conventional stuff. Dennis Andres, no one would. No, he was a horrible fighter to watch. Crude, did nothing right, but then was massively successful. He was a world champion. He was a 3-time world champion in the light heavyweight. So why? He just had something. But now no one would even look. No, people just would slate him left, right, and centre. I mean, even at the highest level, he can't do this, he can't do that, he can't do this, and trainers wouldn't train him because they wouldn't be able to say all the pretty, sexy stuff that we all say. Or pundits wouldn't talk about him because we wouldn't be able to say all the pretty stuff that we want to say. They make us sound clever, like we're geniuses at the sport, and we just invented all these little moves that have been going on before we even born. That's the truth of it. Just lost my job now, and everyone's job. But it is, though, isn't it? We do.
Mind you, that's something that we've spoken about on the podcast on several occasions.
Yeah, and I don't want to be negative. I always I love boxing. All I do is moan about it. But that's not. It's not even a criticism. I don't know why I've gone to this natural moaning thing. Because I got a naturally moany voice. But and I'm old now very quickly. But either way, like Josh Taylor is a real. I say throwback, but that's a term that's used now. But he's a boxer of every generation. He's any generation boxer. I guess that's what we could say, where he would be fitting in neatly. I'm not saying he beats any generation of fighters, but he would fit in nicely the way he fights in any generation, not out of place. He would be excellent every generation, but he's technically and tough enough to be there. Because some boxers are pretty now. Like if you put me in the 70s, the way I box with no power, and fighters would have got away with murder, back then. So I'm getting headbutted and things, and I'm not so successful. Or I have to adapt my style, but he don't have to. He boxes the same way, and he's still as good as he is now. Whether he goes on to be as successful depends on the fighters he's up against, but he's still as good as he is now in any generation.
Where do you rank him when you compare to British fighters of the last 20 years? I mean, achievement-wise, he even after just 18 fights, World Boxing Super Series winner, undisputed champion at super lightweight, beat some really good fighters to do it as well. Where would you put him in and amongst that bracket?
I can't give a number on it, to be honest, because
but he's surely in the conversation.
When's 20 years ago? What are we in now? 2021. So that's
a good point. So this century, really.
To me, it's like I go 20. You say 20 years, I go all right. So that's
70s and 80s.
That's 1985. But he's one of the. Well, if you're saying in this century, then he's one of the best we've had by far. No, he's got to be, hasn't he? He's got to be Britain's best fighter today. Like, I think ahead and above.
Oh, for sure. Because he
might not be as flamboyant as his fighter or as technically as good as his fighter, but as a complete package, he's in the pound for pound list, and everyone's pound for pound list now in the world boxing. He maybe should have been in it already, but now he has to be. And not because he's won 4 belts. It's because he beat a genuinely good world class fighter again, by the way. Not just one off. This wasn't like Lopez beating Lomachenko, which maybe was an all-time bet, an all-off better one win. But Lopez hadn't beat no one else, really. Let's be honest.
Nakatani, not the same.
And I'm not disrespecting Commey. Commey's a very good fighter, and he is a very good fighter. But I mean,
it's not the same level. It's a Prograis, Baranchik, even Victor Postel.
Exactly. It's not. He's had one gimme in his last 6-7 fights,
which was a mandatory.
Yeah, one gimme. Yeah, and to be fair, that's all he's had, and he probably regrets that. You take that fight out, and it's like that's a run of fights which rivals anyone in any era. By the way, in any era, a run of fights there, because those fights as well, they weren't just undefeated. Anyone can be undefeated. No, to be fair, but they were undefeated and good. They were all good fighters. They weren't just undefeated by chance where they'd been easily matched. They were all decent, good, hard fights. Yeah.
Ricky Hatton, Amir Khan, Josh Taylor at 140. How do you rank those three?
I think he gets to Khan. So I think Khan's a nightmare, and so you can't underestimate how good Khan was and how fast he was, but I just can't see him keeping Taylor off. He got to knock Taylor out. That's what I feel. And though he can hurt you,
Khan not the biggest for punches either at 140. Fast, sharp, but
I think he. Khan gets overlooked a lot though.
Yeah, I agree.
Because he's been chinned, but at 140 he was very good.
Very good fight.
He gives Hatton like all sorts of problems.
Difficult to win rounds against Amir Khan. That type of fighter. Where would you rank them so much as a legacy?
I think. Oh well, it's hard because the legacy with Hatton is he was a hero. Maybe the last working class hero. I don't follow other sports, but I always say he's the last working class hero in any sport. So that's a bollocky statement because I don't follow other sports, so I don't know. But in boxing, he's the last working class hero for me. So with that, you almost forget about his career. His career was fantastic, by the way. And that Costa Zoo win trumps all the wins that Taylor has, and that Khan has as well, to be fair. But because even though Costa Zoo might have been on the tail end of his career, he was still very good.
One of the best pound-for-pound fighters in the world.
And Ricky walked through walls to beat him. Literally, walls of steel, those shots. Other fighters would maybe Taylor would have got knocked out with some of those shots that Hatton hit. I think Taylor beats Taylor beats Naz.
Probably would have beaten Naz.
And he beats. Well, that's not a give me, like. I think he beats Hatton.
Yeah,
I do.
So you would go with Taylor 1,
Hatton
2, Khan 3.
Yeah. Yeah. How far are we going to go down? We're just the world champion, Junior Witter?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't think you can really put Witter in the conversation, really.
No.
As harsh as that may sound.
But he might beat Naz. Where's he Naz all
We
the
got
time?
Naz in your head.
Naz, I don't know.
Living in your head rent free. Anyway, let's move on from kind of listing the 140s. Let's go back to the fight. We mentioned round 6, the knockdown, that beautiful counter left hand over the top. The heavy knockdown in the 7th round, that short uppercut. Were you surprised that Josh Taylor didn't push forward and go for the finish? It seemed to be there for him, particularly in that 8th, 9th, 10th round.
Maybe.
Because the scorecards as well, as again we'll come on to, were pretty close, 6 rounds apiece, and the knockdowns ultimately won it for Josh Taylor. So
yeah, I don't see it. I didn't
have it that close either. But
I think Ramirez is getting credit for going forward, totally just for going forward. To be fair, and every round was cleanly contested. And if you're watching, I scored the fight when I watched it, because if you watch a fight and you think Taylor won rounds big and Ramirez won rounds, so then you think Taylor's walking it. And it's not the case, but or if you don't know some of the or you only got 2 knockdowns and he's won the fight, and that's not always the case. But I scored every round, and I think Taylor was just much better in every.
How did you score the fight?
I think I had it when I got it on here, so I had 116, 111.
Okay.
So without the knockdowns, it's just a close fight, and I think that's fair enough. It's a relatively close fight, and of course it was. But I think it was a close fight where you only could have had one winner, because. Without the knockdowns, that don't mean that Ramirez has won the round. People go, well, without the knockdowns, that don't mean that's a 10-9 to Ramirez. That still could be 10-9 to Josh Taylor. So it don't mean he's lost the round, even though that could have ended up being a draw or whatever it could have been. But
that's assuming that Josh Taylor would have won those rounds on the judges' cards without the knockdowns as well. So it could have been without the knockdowns, he could have lost the fight.
Yeah, of course, yeah. They might have gone the other way. But yeah, maybe he could have gone for the finish, but no. He's in against a guy who he knows has already got up off a shot, and to think that, he knows how good he is, and I think keeping your composure in a fight like that is quite important. I think he goes all out, and if he doesn't get the stoppage,
do you think it was a case of if he was going to get the stoppage, it was going to be in that 8th round and
possibly
maybe make more of a dent in him?
The 8th round was hard for Ramirez. It was really, I thought that was a really hard round, and I thought he done well to see it because he was tight. He hadn't recovered. He was
buzzed badly.
Yeah, he hadn't recovered from the knockdown, and he was hurt. But he's a fantastic fighter, and he soldiered on. But yeah, and maybe he would have, Josh. Maybe he should have. Who knows? But I can't criticise the performance at all. I can't. You're up against the best. That was number 1, number 2.
Yeah, for sure.
No, you could say Prograis could still be number 1, and number 2, or number 3. But he beat Prograis, so they were there. Like it was a proper knockout tournament, pretty much, and he's there. And I thought he was right. I thought he was right. He did enough to win, and there was no, in my mind, there was no argument that he was so far ahead. Well, not so far ahead. With the knockdowns, he was so far ahead that he had to just be safe. Not lose, not give rounds away, but be safe. And yeah, And also, he's knackered. He's again, that's a massive thing for Josh. You forget about he's gone to America, different climate. The whole thing's new for him. That's a massive change for the biggest fight in your life to go and fight in the desert. We've seen many fighters before who've done that and have come and stuck with it. Because the altitude's different, the air is different there, and however long you're there to acclimatise, it's still not quite your comfort zone.
Yeah, slightly different climate and look to Glasgow and Edinburgh. Obviously, the box of the hydro for his last.
That's the other thing when you're pasty white. You can't even go in the sun, can you? You know what I mean?
Okay, moving forward. As always in this funny old game of boxing, no matter what your achievement, everybody wants to know what's coming next.
Yeah.
Now it looks as though it's going to be Jack Catterall, the WBO mandatory, who, of course, it's important to point out, stepped aside to make this fight, to make the undisputed fight. He's got first dibs on Josh Taylor next. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I get every fight that was a banana skin, isn't it, for Josh Taylor? Because that's a fight. I find that a hard fight for Taylor. I almost think he shouldn't bother. I think he's won those 4 belts now, and he's undisputed, and boxing's a hard career, and he's had a hard career himself, and he's hot now. Just take that. I never say I have an easy fight, but it's not an easy. It's no easy.
No, Jack Catterall's
people say it's an easy
fighter.
fight. There's no easy fight. And he's a massive favourite against Jack Catterall, and I would say that if Catterall beats him, that's one of the biggest upsets in the last few years. To be fair, though Catterall's a good fighter, and he's clever, he's tricky.
Yeah, but now we were talking about Josh Taylor has now elevated himself to one of the very best fighters in the world.
Say Josh does beat him, so his career moves on. It's great. But what if Catterall boxes the best? Catterall does what he can do best and be awkward, and then ends up being a stinker of a fight, and Josh Taylor's stock drops slightly, just because he's a horrible fight and it's hard, and he gets exposed. His feet are not fast enough as he should be. All of a sudden, you see little faults in him now, and so he's not this unbeatable fighter anymore. Then it's a harder sell for him now to go and get those Teofimo Lopez's, even though he's still got the 4 belts. Though, will he still have the 4 belts by the end of the year? You tend to think, yeah, he should. But listen, we know what boxing's like, and organisations and how much they want. As much as they say, no, you've done your mandatories, fair enough, we'll wait in line. How things change. And boxers push the narrative, and all of a sudden, someone else moves up and they become number 1, and they're a big draw. You want to fight him, but you've got to fight the mandatory for the other belt. And you're going, can you just let me off? No, you can't let me off. Because everyone wants to make a living off it. And so it's going to be hard for him to keep all those belts. So I would take the next biggest fight. Even if I got to give it the belts, he's done it now. He's done it. He's not going to keep those belts forever. If he keeps them for 12 months, it's amazing. To be fair, I can't see that. I just can't see it. Not in this climate. Just no chance at all. Too many. Keeping 2's hard enough. No, but keeping 4. It's going to be so difficult.
It is difficult.
Keeping your own bloody belt with the WBC or WBA because they want to elevate you to something else.
Well, I mean, Gervonta Davis is boxing Mario Barrios in just over a month's time for a WBA 140-pound title of sorts. So there's that out there. There's we've seen at the lightweight division. I think one of the things that I'd really like to point out here, something that we were speaking about before we got started, there's no caveats to this undisputed title. There's no asterisks. There's no Josh Taylor was elevated or Ramirez was elevated, so it's not like we had at lightweight with Teofimo Lopez and Devin Haney. This is a proper undisputed champion who beat everybody in front of him and got all of the belts, which is great.
He's done it. It's done. And the fact, and he's not going to. Say he's a comfortable 140 for the rest of his career. He doesn't. So why you don't have to move up and down? Why do you have to? But
you get those lightweights coming up.
But I think he's big. I think he's big enough to go. He looks big for the weight for me. But if he makes the weight fine and he can stay there, that's great. But he won't keep all those belts. Say he never gets beat, Taylor. Just say he never gets beat. He ends up with 30. He never keeps those 4 belts together forever. It's impossible. You've done it now. Keep the one you want, and fight who you want.
I think with regards to his belts, obviously we mentioned Appen and Kong Song with the IBF. The IBF are kind of famous really for enforcing those mandatories. They're not with respect to WBA. So I think that will probably see him with a little bit of grace with them. He's the WBO with Jack Catterall. I think the Jack Catterall fight Obviously, both being with MTK is a very easy fight to make anyway, and of course he's mandatory.
Yeah.
But I think the carrot for Josh Taylor there is to box at Edinburgh Castle or at Easter Road. I think that's got to be kind of one of the. Are you going to get a Teofimo Lopez or are you going to get a Terence Crawford to come and box you at Edinburgh Castle?
No, you're not. But but how much are you going to get? Like now for him, he's at the level now where he's almost a superstar status. So are you going to get the same money for boxing Jack? And it's not. No, Jack Hatchell deserves his shot. And kudos to him for taking that step aside. I hope he got well paid. He should have got well paid step aside money. I hope he did because he deserves it. He didn't have to, and he could have messed it all up. But I wouldn't have been angry with him because that's his career. Why should he worry about the state of boxing over his career? This is his life, but he did it, and good for him. And I hope he got well paid for it. So he deserves his shot against whoever it is. He deserves his shot. And whether he wants to fight for all the belts against Josh Taylor, whether he's going to be a massive underdog, or he boxes the number 2 contender, whoever that is, and he becomes the favourite for one belt, he still becomes a world champion. So that'd be great. And he maybe deserves that as well. But it's not about that. It's will he get the same sort of money for boxing Cattrall in Edinburgh? As much as he want to do that, I understand that. But just say, for argument's sake, they say, I'll give you 600 grand for boxing. I don't know what the money is. It could be 6 million, or it could be £6,000. Just say 600 grand for boxing for boxing Jack Cattrall in Edinburgh Castle. Wow, it would be probably BT Sport or Channel 5 or Fight TV, who knows? But or DAZN, who knows? You don't know where they're going to go. But or Sky, don't miss Sky. Or Channel 5. Oh, hang on.
This is Barry trying to lobby to keep all of his deals.
BBC on the radio. TalkSport, phone me. But or he goes and boxes Teofimo Lopez
for 3 million or whatever.
Exactly. Or Terence Crawford for 6 million, or whatever.
But does he need to do
or Manny Pacquiao?
We're going to come on to that. He's got himself a big fight sorted out.
No, what I'm saying, but either way, it's a hard career. He's got that level now where he could have Hall of Famers or potential Hall of Famers on his record. You got to be looking for them big fights now. I think and getting out now while he's young. But he's not young. But he's young enough to get out intact, healthy, wealthy, and massively respected. The respect in his career now is there. It's done.
Yeah, he's done. He
got one of those
he's
ticks
achieved
where,
everything that he said he wanted to.
You can't pick a hole in his career. Imagine that. No one's got that. Joe Calzaghe, 46-0, god of boxing. I love him with all my heart. He's my sort of age, and he's my hero. So it's a weird thing, that. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I know him, and he's still my hero. You know what I mean? You can pick holes in his career all day long. You can't pick a hole in Josh Taylor's career. Just cannot. And if you do, you're an asshole. That's the truth. You just can't. Who could say that? Who could say that?
I think this is one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about. I mean, I put out a tweet this morning, and one of the things that I've seen in the last 48 hours or so. I mean, first of all, British fighters and British boxing, we've been taking a little bit of a hiding in certainly some of these top level fights. But one of the things that was really pleasing for me to see as a British boxing fan before any journalist or anything like that is seeing some of these big American names. Shakur Stevenson was the one that I saw this morning that made me tweet it, but coming out and saying, Josh Taylor did it this way, he did it the hard way. He is a fighter's fighter. Yeah. Every single fighter, all of his peers have come out from both sides of the Atlantic and really praised Josh Taylor for the way he's carried his career as a fighter in a sport like boxing, where, as you mentioned, people will pick holes in Joe Calzaghe, people pick holes in Floyd Mayweather, people pick holes everywhere. To have that kind of esteem and respect from your peers on both sides of the Atlantic, you cannot quantify that. You can't put a price on that, surely, as a fighter.
You cannot put a price on it. But you will if you can give him big money. He'll fight Jake Paul if they offer him 10 million tomorrow. And you have to. As much as we hate all that crap, you'd have to do it. But that's what I'm saying. Take that big fight now.
But even on the back of, we mentioned obviously the last 3 fights were Ramirez, Prograis, Baranchek. There's the Kong Song fight and the Ryan Martin fight, which, the Ryan Martin fight was a disappointing one, but then Postal before that. I don't want to say, is he due an easy one? But, taking a mandatory against Cattrall at Edinburgh Castle, that's still a bucket list thing for him. It's still something that he wants to achieve.
It's an amazing thing to do, and he'll probably want to do that. But again, what I'm saying is, no, he's
get the money while it's there.
He's achieved what no one can achieve, really. He's achieved the most unachievable, especially in this generation, to properly unify a division with no caveats, no arguments. You've done it. Wow. in this, it's just that's
It's so great. It's so great.
It's weird, isn't it? We shouldn't. How much of a cesspool boxing is? We shouldn't be saying this.
Yeah.
You know? But it's just unbelievable. Like it's just next level shit. He might be the only genuine world champion in the world. He's a genuine world champion. No arguments about who's the best. No. Canelo's the best super middleweight.
But Caleb Plant's still got the IBF.
And he argues that he's the best because he haven't been given the opportunity. And there's those people, and every weight you can say that.
Teofimo Lopez has got all of the belts apart from the WBC. Whatever you want to talk about franchise and this, that, and the other.
Whatever it is,
Devin Haney's got the WBC title.
There's an argument for who's the best in every weight, even though there might be an obvious choice. But there's no argument. Pro can say I won the fight. Maybe. I didn't think he won it, but it was close. But
neither did he on the night, by the way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But either way, there's no arguments. He's the number one. Boom, go home now.
Yeah, that's an unbelievable
He should retire.
achievement.
Should retire.
You've gone from fight Teofimo Lopez and Terence Crawford to probably just pack it in.
He
altogether.
retires a god.
Yeah, he
A
can
god.
literally retire after
and
18
also,
fights.
Every year he's retired, his stock goes boom, 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 like that. He becomes, and that goes down to Kazag. That goes down to Lennox Lewis. Now, when Lennox Lewis was boxing, we all knew he was brilliant.
Everyone used to slag him off and say he was boring.
No, he's going. If Lennox was boxing today, now that jab would be punching holes for every boxer who ever put a pair of gloves on. Look, and we're rightly saying that because he was brilliant. You don't realise how good they are until they're gone. And you think, oh, we miss him, and that's how it is. But Taylor's stock would rise every day. But I think that's when you just take those fights, those big fights, because him boxing a Pacquiao, I know Pacquiao's old, or him boxing a Crawford, a Spence, a Lopez, a Lomachenko, please don't move up anymore. But whoever, or Ryan Garcia, who's a big, that's a massive, that's a fight that I can't see how he loses, to be honest. But that's a big money fight for him. You would think, put that on Insta, whatever. And make money off that. Don't even show it on TV. But you got to take that. He needs to cash in now. His career's done. There's more he could do. He can be a two-weight world champion, but he's looking for new goals now. But what his aspirations are quenched. They have to be. And so what you want? You keep going on. So what? So you like Sugar Ray Leonard, and then get beat by fighters who shouldn't be, who wouldn't have beat you before, or you end up boxing a young like Terry Norris and he smashes you to pieces, and what happens then? Or you end up with Tommy Earns, a legend, and then he's boxing for too long and he's getting beat by like idiots. What happens? Where does it end for you?
So, which fight would you like to? I think the Catchall fight's going to happen. I think
Josh
Taylor wants that fight. Wants it at Edinburgh Castle.
And I don't argue with that. It's a great fight. It's a good fight. I mean, it's a good fight, and Jack deserves it. To be fair, but it might be a stinker of a fight if Jack has any success. To be fair, I think that's where you want to frustrate Taylor. And it's a banana skin for Taylor, which you get no credit for beating Jack.
And also,
you get no credit. You won't get one iota of credit. You get criticism for taking the fight.
Already seen on social media, kind of the Americans who won't have seen Jack Catchall, won't have known that Jack Catchall has been a part of Floyd Mayweather's camps in the past, Miguel Cotto's camps in the past. At one time, you remember when Jack was coming through, there was a lot of hype around him and a lot of intrigue.
I've most of Jack's fights, so I've seen how brilliant he can be, and also how frustrating he can be. Yeah. But he's a good fighter. On his day, when he's at the very best, he's a problem. He's very tricky, very clever, and a southpaw to boot. But still, they don't know who he is. And this would be now Taylor, after all this euphoria and all his peers clapping him, and like he deserves, and enjoy it. He takes this fight, and it's not a slight at Jack Catchall, because Jack Catchall was just as instrumental for that fight, for Taylor's win, than Taylor and Ramirez themselves, because he allowed that fight to happen by swallowing his opportunities, let him have a go. But he'll get criticism for that fight for the first time. And if it's a stinker, why is he boxing this kid for? And or what if he blows Catchall out of there? Just say that happens for the argument's sake. Why does he get this for? And all of a sudden, you go about that Kong Song fight, and they go, look at him, like, and then people all of a sudden...
It becomes revisionist again.
Yeah, his career that can't be poked holes in. People starting to go, well, he had him and in mind, and then Ryan Martin wasn't that good. And all of a sudden then,
Baranchik got knocked out by Zapata.
Out of his last 7 fights, only 2 of them have been any good.
And Prograis beat him anyway.
Posto was damaged goods. Do you know what I mean? Like,
it's so easily done in boxing.
Isn't it? But you can't pick holes in his career right now. And
of course
that's why I would say, if you got the opportunity to box Catchall to defend all your belts, and I know he's going to do that, and I understand that. I have no argument with it. Or you have an opportunity to box Crawford or Lopez for 1 belt or no belts, it don't matter. Or move up and wait to be a 2-weight world champ, whatever. They're the big money fights. Boxing's a hard, horrible career. I said about Saunders after he got beat. He should retire now. And it wasn't because he's not good enough to fight again. It's not he's not good enough to win a world title again. And he can't be competitive. He'll never be Canelo. But he did okay in the fight. And that's against the pound-for-pound best. But the fact that it's a hard, horrible career, and he's got an injury, which might be really bad. I didn't know at the time, so I just didn't know. But he's earned plenty of money. He's a two-weight world champion. And to finish unless you can finish on a win, finish on a loss against the pound-for-pound best and a living legend and one of the greatest Mexicans, if not the greatest Mexican, depending who you talk to, who's ever lived, is not a bad way to go. I'm proud that I lost to a very good fighter rather than a shit fighter, which can happen to some fighters. I also lose to a fighter who's good enough to beat you, not a fighter who he wouldn't have beat you if you were like 2 years younger. Course. So it's not a bad way to finish. He won't get no criticism for that. And same with Taylor. He's doing great now. You're there. Just and cash the money and get out. He deserves that now. Because for all you know, he'd be 33. And then he's not a young fighter anymore. He's not at his prime. He's over his peak. And then, because he boxes cattle now. What if he hurt his hand?
Gets a bad cut.
Those belts go goodbye. And he's 31, going on 32 before he boxes again. And then he can't have a hard fight back then. You got to have another easy-ish fight.
And then you're 6 months further down the line.
And then he's 33, going on 34, before you know it.
Right, we've got to get on with it because, as usual, we've rambled on. We've got to get you out of here. Final one on Josh Taylor. Okay, right. Put in Jack Catterall the Jack Catterall fight to one side. Which fight do you want to see him in? Which fight tickles your fancy?
Oh, Lopez.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think about Crawford, but if he's comfortable at the weight Taylor, which I
don't think he's moving up anytime soon, personally.
Then the Lopez fight's a great fight because there's a guy there who's big enough to not be overawed by the strength, and his athleticism and explosive power will give Taylor plenty of problems as well. Taylor beats him though.
Yeah.
Yes, Taylor beats everyone. Anybody
under 140 pounds, he has to be a favourite.
Anyone under 155 pounds, he beats. I say 155 because If Canelo can beat catchweight, why can't Taylor?
I'd like to see that as well. I'd like to see Teofimo Lopez versus Josh Taylor. I don't think he's going to move up anytime soon at 147. And also, I think that when he does move up to 147, I think Crawford would have flown the top ranked nest by that point.
Maybe, but I think that might be the fight that keeps Crawford in the top ranked nest. Because I think I tell you what, he'll won that fight more than the other fight. Bob Arum, he'll won Taylor versus Crawford. Because
it's all in house.
Yeah, all in house. Well, so Lopez is not anymore, is he? Yeah, maybe. Who knows? But
we don't know.
Either way, that's all in house. Yeah, and yeah, but forget about that. I think the Lopez and Taylor fights are more.
I think the build up to that would be really spicy.
It's a more enjoyable fight stylistically. I think because they go at each other. I think Lopez has to move more around, but they go at each other. Where Crawford, being more athletic, he can be spiteful. He can also make a fight quite boring, and he can frustrate you because he has that ability. And I think you try and do that to Taylor, certainly the first half. So yeah, so that's it. So Taylor versus Lopez, I'll take that every day of the week. But Josh Taylor, wow,
unbelievable,
just unbelievable,
unbelievable.
He's a god. He's a god in boxing. He's a god. His grandmother's Welsh,
So are you claiming him?
Most definitely. Yeah. I made that up. Actually, I don't know if his grandmother. I don't know if you got a grandmother, but yeah, his grandmother's Welsh. Yeah, his grandfather used to holiday in Barry Island regular. Yeah.
Okay, right. Moving on because we've got to get you out of here. We were talking about step-asides and Jack Catterall and what have you. Let's move on and talk about the heavyweight division. I can't remember where we were with it all the last time we spoke, but AJ Fury's not happening. We are going to get a rerun of this fight. Wilder versus Fury 3. Thoughts?
I used to, when they said about that they got a third fight, I said, well, there's no worth in the third fight because the first fight I thought he won, but it was a draw. The second fight he won conclusively, so you can only really pick one winner. Now I sort of think it's an interesting fight now because Fury's been out for a while, and Wilder, with that power, he's always in the fight. So it's a good fight. But I just don't believe that all these fights are so hard to make. First of all, I don't like rematch clauses. I love rematches. I don't like rematch clauses. The fact that you're going to fight each other next, regardless of the result of the fight you're in right now, is lunacy. And it holds up careers of everyone around you. That's what I think. It's ridiculous. And it's potentially held up the Joshua Fury fight, which everyone in the whole world would rather see. Most people. But whoever wins this fight, bosses Joshua. The Wilder Joshua fight is still a huge fight. Fury Joshua is bigger, of course, but I'm not sure that fight was ever going to happen. No.
Joshua Fury?
Yeah.
No, I don't think the fight
Because
was ever going to happen.
if this fight gets signed like this, and all these fights are a murder to make, and all of a sudden, like, they can't make that fight. This fight has been they've been in negotiations for months, and everyone's in agreement, but they still can't get over the line. And then all of a sudden, he pops up with his. And listen, if you got, no, I don't argue that Wilder should get his shot, because if you sign a contract, you should, legally, then you have to. He's done what he's done is right. But they've known about this for ages, haven't they? They've all of a sudden they're signing contracts now after a week if it's been announced that.
Well, there was the clip that was put out on social media of Tyson Fury signing his contract, and they panned down from Deontay Wilder, who had signed his 3 days previous, which would have meant following the arbitration clause, they would have made the rematch in 48 hours or something like that afterwards, which. That's not realistically going to have happened.
No.
There was talk of the Allegiant Stadium. We don't know whether or not it's going to go there in Vegas, but you can't really sort those things out in 48 hours, 72 hours. It has to have been in the pipeline. We saw Bob Arum and Tyson Fury go to Bob Arum's own words, where it wasn't necessarily a mediation, it was more a negotiation with regards to Wilder for the trilogy bout, and all of the kind of things. I mean, hindsight's a wonderful thing, particularly in boxing. It's so nuanced, even behind the scenes, outside of the ring. But now we're looking back at it and thinking, that makes more sense now. And now we've got here.
And Bob Arum has been so quiet in all this, like, Fury Wilder thing. Fury Joshua.
He must. I mean, Bob Arum was he was a Harvard educated lawyer.
Yeah.
He must have known that there was something in this contract. I mean, we got all of these announcements and Fury announcements and blah 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 blah. I mean, a couple of weekends ago, the Monday was when the arbitration ruling was coming. I think Dan Raphael tweeted about it. And then we had all of these announcements on the Sunday and the Saturday. By all accounts, I mean, sources, I don't want to be that guy, that pissed the arbitrator off, when he's kind of waiting to announce what's going on with his arbitration. And you've got all of these announcements about fights that are going to happen that obviously supersede your ruling. So I don't think that necessarily went down too well. But you make a good point there when you look back at, Bob Arum was very quiet. They said that they'd signed NDAs. Eddie's not supposed to be talking about it, blah, 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 blah. For me, in hindsight, as we say, hindsight's a wonderful thing. It kind of beggars belief that Al Heyman, somebody as worldly and knowledgeable and respected, business powerhouse outside of boxing, would have... we were told that he left the contract on the table and just let it expire. That just doesn't make any sense, does it? And when you consider, I mean, this fight in particular is a good example. Andy Ruiz had signed for a rematch with Anthony Joshua. There was no chance of Andy Ruiz going to unify all the belts against Deontay Wilder, which would have been an in-house PBC fight, would have been a massive fight on Cinco de Mayo weekend, obviously with Mexican heritage. Yeah. Eddie Hearn came out and said several times after that first fight in New York that he will have a rematch clause. We have a contract that is watertight. He cannot go and fight anybody else. I wouldn't have
rematch clauses, and in every championship fight, I'd have a 70-30. Champion challenger. Even if it would never happen, of course. People are going to say, what are you talking about? This is not a business sense. I've got no business sense at all.
This is from a boxing perspective. Yeah.
No, because if the biggest draw is the challenger, then I understand that he wants more money because I'm the biggest draw. But you had the opportunity to fight for the title. So you've got this option because you are the bigger draw. So you've got to, he's the champion, he takes the biggest piece of the pie. And if you're better than him, you beat him, and your next fight's 70-30. No rematch clauses. You can make a rematch. The only time there should be a rematch is if that fight is massively controversial or it's a draw. Then there should be a rematch. And I'm not even sure an immediate rematch, by the way. You should have your place. Because, you're number one contender, you box the champion, and you get beat, you should drop down at least 5 places. At least. And now the others do, and then you have to box number 4 or whatever it is, and then he goes up to number 3. Because number 1 is boxed, and he goes back down, and then number 6 gets to fight you. However the system works, I've sort of already shot myself in the foot there already. I've missed people out, but it's there shouldn't be an automatic rematch clause. But there's some fights you want to see automatically straight away, but they don't happen anyway. But so I just think all these clauses don't help boxing. They help the fighters personally, because then Ruiz boxes Joshua for whatever, late notice, and they go, well, if you win, you get the return. And it covers Joshua then. There's no risk. There's always a risk in a fight, but there's no real risk because you get the opportunity to fight for it again. There should be you box better with a massive risk that if you lose, you go down to 30% of the purse, and if you lose, you don't get a shot. You got to wait in line again. Now, where's the fear factor? Except for getting punched in the face. I understand that. I box brothers, so I know what the fear factor of a fight is. The fear factor, I never had rematch clauses because I won a big enough name. So I know if I lose, I'm gone. I mean, I don't mean I go down the rankings and have to start again. If I lose, I'm disappeared. Like I gotta go box almost area level before I get back to world title level again. No, it's not even. No, that's what it's like almost for people who are not marketable. So you know the fear factor of how important it is to win that fight. So you go with that extra edge, and if you're good, then you need that extra edge. So if you've got that comfort zone thinking, "Oh, I gotta beat him," but knowing that if I don't beat him, I can fight him again and make it right in 6 months' time. What's that all about? Maybe have a fixture. Let's turn the football. Have fixture list though, should we? Might as well have a Premier League boxing and a fixture list.
Don't give them any ideas, Barry.
It's a good idea, actually.
It's a good idea in principle, but once
list,
everybody got their claws into it, I'm pretty sure it would be European Super League style, wouldn't it? It would be okay. Well, these 6 fighters can't actually get relegated or lose. You know,
I always thought with this COVID, they should have had subs.
Yeah.
In place ready.
Yeah.
And tell the public if somebody gets COVID, this is the fight that will happen.
Well, I mean, they've had that. I mean, they've not always announced it, but they've had that.
Yeah.
I know that obviously it came out.
I'm glad they took my idea on board before I had it.
I know it came out in Fight Week, but I know that John Ryder and Carlos Gongora were kind of drafted in as potential stand-ins for Canelo or Billy Joe Saunders for that fight.
They weren't. That's bollocks. Because that was never real. That was just another publicity thing to...
I have to disagree with you there, mate. I knew about that a few weeks before it happened.
Just like Chisora's mum with for never saving the day.
No, that was bollocks. But anyway, we'll move on.
Was it though? Well, so was that the other one?
Yes.
Because Canelo never said a word about it.
We can talk about it when the cameras are stopped. But yes, that was bollocks. Moving back to the heavyweight division, kind of last one on that. I mean, we've spoken so fucking much about the negotiations. It's a laborious thing, but it is still very much part of the sport. In hindsight, you think Al Heyman and Bob Arum probably knew slightly more than they were letting on to Uncle Eddie?
I think they all know. I think they all know. Why do Eddie care? Because Eddie just promote. I think it's just.
I mean, it's great promotion for Wilder Fury 3, that's for sure.
But also you're constantly, and also it's good promotion for what's his name? The other fella,
Joshua.
I'm joking. For Joshua and Usyk. What's his name now? For Joshua and Usyk.
You think Joshua Usyk will happen?
Who knows? No, but they'll talk about it and then they have a replacement probably. But either way, what I'm saying, I don't know. I don't really get involved with that. I don't care. I just want to see the fights. I don't care how much he's getting. If you're getting 100 million, brilliant. If you're getting £200,000, as boxing fans, we shouldn't care what they get. We all want boxers with loads of money, fighters with loads of money, and retire with their health and wealth, and all be happy. Yeah. We want that, of course. But we don't care about football players. We don't care that the goalkeeper gets less than the striker. We don't go, the poor goalkeeper. He should let that goal in. He's not getting enough. It's not right. This is not right. Equal pay for every position. Who cares what they get? I don't care. That's their business. Good luck to them. But if they not, they don't have to do it. So we just worry about the fights. We don't. You can't blame Wilder because that's his money. You can't blame Fury for taking his fight. Can't blame Joshua for doing that because there's the big money there. Why do we give a shit about that? We're not giving us any of it, are they? That's their business. I understand they're doing it for themselves, but for the sport, we just want to see the good fights. And so, but I think But the thing is, Eddie Hearn constantly talking about these two all the time just keeps him in your eye. And they're thick-skinned, these promoters. They don't care about the criticism because they come with a big nugget and they've saved the day. So the more criticism they get, and when they do show a big fight, they get more praise. Rather than otherwise, you show great fights all the time, that becomes the norm. And they don't get no praise. That's your job, mate.
What do you make of Anthony Joshua versus Alexander Usyk, if indeed that does happen? Obviously, he's the WBO mandatory. Yeah. He's stepped aside already for the Ruiz rematch, and the Kubrat-Pulev fight helps Usyk.
Because he gets a chance to build into the weight. Because you see the other fights like Hay they've had to put on bulk to get up there while keeping that agility. And that's important for Usyk. He's a nightmare for Joshua, but size is a problem. Now, he never had trouble with Chisora, Usyk. I don't know where people go. There's
a massive, revisionist going on there. That's
he had no trouble at all with him, but he couldn't put a dent in him. But then nor could big heavyweights put a dent in Chisora. No, Hay knocked him out. So he didn't put a dent in him at all until he knocked him out. So contradicts yourself.
Do you know what I mean? Like, shot, yeah.
And Usyk was never a one-punch artist anyway.
He had Chisora hurt. I think at the end of the 7th round he had him hurt.
But he can't. Now him now putting a bit more bulk, muscle mass, and slightly tinkering the way he fights because of putting more weight will benefit him, I think. But I still think Joshua, is much better than Chisora, of course, and he punches correct. Joshua's technically pretty good. He's not a great boxer, but he's technically quite neat. He keeps his shape, and he punches down the line. So, I think that will be a bit of a problem with the size. If he can impose his size on Usyk, I would fancy Joshua to stop him, actually, to be honest. But though, I wouldn't be shocked if Usyk just danced around him. But Usyk's not a Lomachenko. People think he's a Lomachenko. No. He's not. He can't be that because he's too big to be like that.
He catches a lot of shots as well, Usyk.
He's a blocker. He is. That's so good he is. And I always worry. I said this before, actually. Where you said, can he do that at a bigger weight? Because those shots, blocking him, even if they don't break up with his guard, they push him physically back. And he struggled. If he did struggle against Chisora, it was that maybe at best. But yeah, it's a risky fight. Everything's a risky fight. With these heavyweights, everything's a risky fight. This is a risky fight for Fury. Fury could walk right through him again, but if he gets caught.
With the inactivity, with regards to Wilder Fury 3, do you think that favours Wilder more than it does Fury? I mean, Fury's. I made this point on Twitter. Fury's more of a rhythm fighter than Deontay Wilder. Deontay Wilder's that big concussive one punch power with the right hand.
I do. That's why. No, even though I thought Wilder was going to beat Fury the first fight, because Fury's a much better boxer all round. Of course he is. But the only reason I thought he'd win that was because Fury had no real fights building up to that fight. So this is a massive step up in power levels and everything else, I just thought, it's a step too far too soon. He could have to beat Wilder, but not right now. And he proved you wrong. He got a draw, but everyone thought he won, really. But he hasn't been active. He haven't been boxing easy fights. He had no fights. And I think that's a worry for a boxer, because he's a natural boxer. He needs to be around. He might be in the gym all the time, but it's not quite the same. You need to be around. You need to be around all the time. You need to be fighting semi-regularly when you're a natural boxer, which he is.
And that's one of the things that's one of the things that he said in the build-up to the Wilder rematch. I mean, he boxed Tom Schwartz in June, Valin in September. Then they kind of really, and this was one of the things that Bob Arum said, that they'd really made Las Vegas a home for Fury. So when Wilder was coming over to box there, obviously Wilder had boxed in Vegas beforehand anyway. He boxed Ortiz in November in Vegas, but it was very much kind of home ground for Tyson Fury. He'd boxed there it was the third time he'd boxed there in, I think, 9 months or something, and Tyson himself had said about the benefit of that. Now, going into this fight, 18 months, Fury's been living the life of the heavyweight champion of the world in the last 18 months. Of course, he's been staying in the gym, and it's kind of how he likes to say he keeps himself well. But as you've said, like, he doesn't have that date to work towards, or he hasn't had that in the past. So there's only so much he can do. If he takes the eye off the ball, I'm not saying he will, but if he does take the eye off the ball even for a fraction of a second, Deontay Wilder only needs a fraction of a second to win the fight.
He does, and because Deontay Wilder's not, even though he's an Olympic medalist, and it sounds weird to say, he's not a natural boxer. He's an athlete with tremendous power. So he doesn't need to be ring ready, because he's not going to outbox Wilder, Fury. He's not going in to do that. He's got to go in to destroy him. So they can work on that. So you don't need to be. It always helps if you've had fights, but you don't need to be as sharp as Fury does. But I still favour Fury. If Fury's switched on like he was in the first fight, and certainly the second fight, I think he beats him. That's the thing, and that's why I think Fury beats Joshua, because he can win in so many different ways. And that's why I thought Taylor would beat Ramirez, because he could win more than one way. And that's why, so I look at it like that. You can win.
Being able to adapt to the fight.
Unless your best trumps all the ways he can win. Sometimes that can happen. But usually, if your best and his best collide and it's hard, then you've got to think the alternatives. What if yours don't work, what your plan B? And some people don't have a plan B. And Wilder doesn't have a plan B. He's not going to all of a sudden. He got the reach to have a decent jab, but he's never learned to throw it, because he hasn't wanted to learn to throw it. And I understand. I always say this about kids. Power sometimes with big punches. Everyone gets excited about him, but it disguises inaccuracies in their work, frailties in their makeup, because they've never learned to be technically good, because their power's always got them through. And that's the perfect case for him as an amateur, as a pro. That big right hand has been the one. The jab's kept you off balance a bit. It's done his job enough. His jab's good enough to keep you off balance, but not against a guy who slips and slides like Fury. Not many boxers do slip and slide like Fury, to be honest. That's why the Wilder Joshua fight's a really good fight, because Joshua could hit Wilder and put him to sleep in a second, but also Wilder could put him off balance with his jab and catch Joshua going backwards with a long right hand, and he's in trouble.
I think that's a massive fight. I mean, I spoke to somebody from Joshua's side of the fence, and they were talking about, you know, Wilder Joshua is still commercially, in their view, a bigger fight around the world. I mean, if you think about kind of American pay-per-view for this, I disagreed, but anyway. But having said that, I don't know. I mean,
it would be a more exciting fight to watch.
But with regards to Deontay Wilder, what Deontay Wilder brings is that American pay-per-view money. And it, like Joshua versus Fury against one of those dance partners. I think the Fury rematch did 900,000 buys. You're going to be looking at around
but
that.
How many's for Wilder though? I hope I'm wrong. I hope he is a big star. I think, you know, in many ways he might deserve it.
Joshua Fury being on in Saudi Arabia in the start time would have made it in the afternoon in America. So I mean, you're looking at on the West Coast that being at 2:00 in the afternoon, 3:00 in the afternoon. If you're ESPN and you're invested in Tyson Fury, the ESPN pay-per-view, how much is that going to sell in the afternoon compared to a prime time slot against a Deontay Wilder or obviously Deontay Wilder with Fox, a Fox pay-per-view with Deontay Wilder and Anthony Joshua, you know?
Well, you're mixing, you know, but to counter that argument, if you put Wilder and Joshua at 2:00 in the afternoon, it'd be exactly the same scenario, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But I mean, just the fighters on their own right. I know he's American, so you think he would have the big backing, but the characters of Joshua, Fury's the character, and Joshua is almost, I don't know if he's still seen that way, as the darling of heavyweight boxing. You know, the inspiration for kids. He was seen, that's what he's seen that way. That might have changed now, I don't quite know. But you know, Joshua, Fury's the big story. No, it's hard to see. Joshua might be still the more commercial out of everyone, to be honest, because he looks the part and he says the right things.
Some of the brand deals that he's got, and
that's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
But you know, for selling a fight, you can't get no better than that lunatic. You can't, can you? Because he's just unpredictable. No, but he knows what to sell. He knows what to sell himself. He really does. He's fantastic. But either way, we're not having that fight now. We might never see that fight. That's the thing.
I think we'll still see it. I do think we'll still see it.
I'm not sure. Everyone wants to build up, Fizzy. Build up. But you've got to be careful. It's like trying to find the perfect punch. And then before you know it, then you're in round 11, you're 10.5 rounds behind. You know what I mean? That's what it's like. You look for that perfect fight. We had to slip up with Ruiz. Because I'm meant to be two undefeated British heavyweights going the biggest fight there's ever been in British boxing and maybe world boxing. No, not the biggest fight in world boxing. One of the biggest in this century. And two undefeated heavyweights at their peak fighting each other.
We were supposed to get that with Wilder and Joshua before the first.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then one gets beaten and the other one gets beat. No, one hasn't got beat. Everyone's painting a different narrative now. It's still two great fighters. The one's come back and won his rightful place again. He's back in the better than ever. But this guy's undefeated after all that depression and all the things he's gone through. He's lost 50 stone in weight and all the rest of it. You know, so all great. There's all great narratives, but they have to but you can only keep doing that. They got to be careful they don't get to an age now where they both of them are rubbish. You know, not going to happen. But or they pass them by. Now, what if Wilder smashes Fury?
Then we get a fourth.
What
fight.
if Usyk stands Joshua on his head? And
Wilder
stops him?
Fury 4?
Well, what we might do with Wilder Usyk
for all the belts.
You just don't know, do you? That's what I mean. It's ridiculous. Like, you know, you just don't know what's going on. Just again, like the same with go back to Josh. To take the fight while it's there. Take the fight while it's there, and they haven't done it. I understand. I sort of understand as well because that fight. There's so much money involved in that fight. It's such a big fight that you want to maximise everything. Forget about the Saudis going, we'll give you 10 billion quid. You're still going to go, that's all brilliant, 10 billion pounds. Brilliant.
I make this point, but you can still, if you wait time, you can get people in on the gate. You can get
exactly.
Exactly.
They're still going to go, but we're still.
You're leaving 50 million on the table still.
Yeah, no, we're still. And that's where they look at it. They go, yeah, well, we'll cover that 50 million. You go, you cover that 50 million.
But we can still get.
But there's still 50 million there, though. Yeah, but we give you 50 million to cover that. Oh, thanks.
Yeah, but.
and understandable
it's
there.
It's true, yeah.
All the fighters go, all right, no problem. All right, everyone takes a hit. Except for us. No, you're going to take a hit. Well, I'm not taking a hit. I'm getting in the ring, mate.
All it takes is one person or one contract in this instance to come out in the wrong way, and then poof,
but
there goes your fight.
Boxing, especially heavyweight boxing, is you just get what you're given. That's the truth of it. You just get what you're given. It's such a financial. Listen, the heavy division got to flourish for the rest of boxing to be viable, financially viable, and commercially viable. That's the truth. And as good as the fight as Taylor is, Josh Taylor's not going to take boxing and make it a mainstream sport. Yeah. He's just not going to do that. As good as he is, unfortunately. But these guys can for the rest of the sport. So you have to just get what you're given. And if these people who are running the sport, if they're not just totally selfish for themselves, I think they're trying to build something. then you have to just go with it. Trust these people. You can trust You can trust them. But either way, this is the fight. Looks like
This is the fight that's happening. Yeah.
Is this the fight that's happening though?
What, Wilder Fury 3?
We don't know, do we?
Well, yeah, we do. The WBO sent a show of whatever the hell it was. To
If an organization's sending us a letter, then you have to believe it.
Fury signed the contract, which also had Deontay Wilder's name. And I know we heard about 15
signed a piece of paper that looked like a contract.
Well, we've seen 15 million different contracts that he supposedly signed to fight Anthony Joshua. But anyway, we'll push that to one side because we have to get on. Before we leave the heavyweights alone, 2 predictions. Wilder Fury 3, how does it go?
Fury points this time.
Fury points this time. Yeah. Okay, interesting. And Anthony Joshua versus Alexander Usyk, if it happens.
Joshua, late stoppage.
Okay, interesting. I don't think we see Joshua versus Usyk,
No,
but we'll come on to that at
I hope
another
not,
point.
because I think I might be wrong with that.
Well, we'll see. Right, before we let you go this week, we've seen all of the talk in the press about Joshua versus Fury, and we've signed the date, and we've got the venue, we've got this, and we've got that. One fight that we didn't hear anything about until it was announced was Manny Pacquiao versus Errol Spence.
Great,
I was just sitting around minding my own business, and then he's what? Manny Pacquiao, 42 years old. I mean,
The thing is, all right. It's only Manny Pacquiao. You could say a 42-year-old still go a 42-year-old boxing. I know he's been out since the car accident, but a prime boxer.
Well, he boxed Danny Garcia. He come back with Danny Garcia.
But go, yes, what a fight. Do you know what I mean? And you go, oh, he's boxing a 42-year-old, but it's Manny Pacquiao, so it's just all bets are off.
And also with Pacquiao, I don't know, at the time I was really surprised. So I can't believe that. And then somebody said, well, why can't you believe it? Look at Pacquiao's career. And you kind of think,
it's a great career now.
yeah, like he's the only person at that stage of his career. He's had, like, there's an argument to say he's had 3 Hall of Fame careers already.
It's crazy.
Which is just unbelievable. And now he's going in there one more time against Errol Spence, the number one, in my opinion, the number one in the division. Say what you want about Crawford ahead of him. Spence has the best wins at 147 by a distance.
He does.
And he's a big welterweight as well. I mean, he's really a junior middleweight or a light middleweight in a welterweight division.
I just can't see Pacquiao beating a big fella. Hang on a minute.
He just can't. No, like,
you know what I mean? Like, again, you should, especially at this age. Oh no, he couldn't be the good young fighter at this age.
But this is what we were saying about Keith Thurman, exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. You know what I mean? Whatever you say about him, you go, you can't do that. But, ooh. And you know, I know Danny Garcia, but Danny Garcia is not the fighter he was, and he's not a big welterweight either. No, that's not fair. He's big enough, and that's a good win. That's a good win for Spence, to be fair. That was, and good to see him back and not really, damaged.
Yeah, kind of went through the motions a little bit at times, but still a good win on paper.
But he's going to have to be sharp against. Unless the thing is, at that age and and the long career he's had, you just don't know what you're going to get. He could fall apart on the night. But if Pacquiao's a good Pacquiao, he's a nightmare for anyone. Because that activity, the way he throws punches,
awkward rhythm, and
it's his feet. He moves around you like this. His feet don't stop moving. But I've never known a fighter to have such active feet, but still maintain the power. It's the weirdest thing. Like you can tell he's not. He's from a kickboxing or something background, or whatever, Thai box or whatever it is, because they have they can throw heavy shots, but be on the balls of their feet. Because they used to kick in, When most boxers, you have to you got to get you're supposed to get the feet right on the balls of your feet for movement, but then you have to plant your feet to throw the hard shot to push off your feet. But he doesn't. So he throws hard shots while he's moving. It's the weirdest. Like no one, I've never known anyone to do it. I mean, you have had people who can do it, of course, but like the way he does it, it's just
from flyweight right the way through as well.
Oh, it's just unbelievable.
He's an absolute freak. I mean, one of the things that kind of initially
only eats his cabbage apparently.
Yeah, well, let's move on from that. But anyway. It was something that somebody kind of mentioned to me. We mentioned that he's 42 years old. You don't know. I mean, what I don't want to see is an old Manny Pacquiao get his ass kicked. I don't want to see.
But that might very well.
Might very well happen. But it might have happened against Keith Thurman, and we saw him in that fight kind of roll back the years. And when you're as great a fighter as Manny Pacquiao has been over such a long period of time, there's always going to be that question of can he do it one more time? And can he roll back the years one more time?
It's not as if he's maintained this degree of excellence throughout his career.
He's had his ups and downs, particularly at welterweight. Yeah,
look at Jeff Horn. Like that I thought. I thought Jeff Horn won that fight. People argued that Pacquiao won it, and it was close. But I thought Jeff Horn won right. And Jeff Horn, decent fighter, but not really nowhere near that level of his level. And you thought, fair enough. But Pacquiao couldn't find that extra gear that he had in the past to get over the line. So this is the end of him. What was that? 5, 6 years ago?
Something like that, yeah.
So all of a sudden you go, wow. Like again, another career. Like it's just the weirdest thing. He sheds the skin, doesn't he? Like every time he gets beat, he sheds the skin and comes back better than ever before. Marquez was the finish of him, really. Fair enough.
He got knocked out by Marquez, and then obviously he beat Tim Bradley, and they give Bradley the decision. But still, that's back-to-back losses. At that stage, you kind of think, oh, what's next for him? But yeah, he's
great, isn't it? But it's a great fight because, like, the activity of him, the movement, and the way he throws his punches, the angles, is for a conventional fighter like Spence, is a nightmare.
We also had John McDonald, who shout out John McDonald. He writes for Boxing Social, and he said that he'd spoken to Freddie Roach a number of years ago. I can't remember after which fight. I think it was 5 years ago. I can't remember which fight Pacquiao had. And Freddie Roach apparently said, like, we don't like the Crawford fight. I don't like the Crawford fight for Manny because I don't think that's a good style matchup for him, but I like the Spence fight. He said Spence is a good fit for Manny, and I think Spence lost 4 times. I think as an amateur, he lost 4 times, all against southpaws. He was hurt against a southpaw as a professional. The only other southpaw he's boxed is Chris Van Heerden. But Freddie Roach has said for a long time that he fancies that fight. And you can kind of see why. When you think about the different styles between Spence and Crawford, you can kind of see why you would gravitate more to Pacquiao against a Spence.
Switch, and he's athletic, so he comes at different angles himself.
And you think about the problems that Pacquiao's had against counter punchers like Marquez, like Mayweather, and guys who can move.
And Spence is brilliant, but Spence is upright, not upright, but if you want to call it, he's as close as upright as you can get, and he's more conventional. So for Pacquiao, the more conventional you are, the better it is for him to move around the target for you, because he needs you to be throwing in straight lines. So he got something. So when you throw a straight jab, he got that to work off. There, he works off that. Then he can work around that movement. But if you're throwing punches from here and different angles, then he can't come at that angle. So you're blocking that route for him, if you like. So he has to adjust himself. But when you're in your conventional, like even that's why the Marquez fights, because all those fighters like that, the Mexicans, because they, as good as they are, they're quite conventional. The jab's going to come before the right hand. So he can switch his feet straight away because he got the fastest feet in boxing. Like even probably still now today, got the fastest feet in boxing. The way he gets around the target is quite phenomenal. And again, I say he maintains that power, and that'll be a problem for Spence if Pacquiao is the Pacquiao we've seen in the past.
It's difficult because
I still fancy Spence though.
Yeah, I fancy Spence, but you can only really call it on what you've seen the last of Manny Pacquiao in the ring, which is against Keith Thurman, and he had plenty left that night. He took some big shots from Keith Thurman as well, particularly in the second half of the fight. All I want to see from the fight, whether he wins or loses Manny Pacquiao, obviously I don't have a horse in the race, so to speak. I'd just like to see 4 or 5 rounds of him rattling off those combinations, in and out with the feet, and really giving Spence those early problems. I do think the size of Errol Spence, the body punching, we saw Keith Thurman land some body punches on Manny Pacquiao that seemed to get a reaction and hurt him. I think Spence will be the bigger man. Maybe some people were talking about, I see a Mikey Garcia performance from Errol Spence. Manny Pacquiao, with all due respect to Mikey Garcia, is not Mikey Garcia. Stylistically, they're very, very different fighters, completely different fighters. But I just want to see 5-6 rounds of Manny Pacquiao. I don't want to say at his best, but
I think you'll get
roll
that.
the years
even
back.
If he's not winning the rounds, he'll be that. The thing you get with Pacquiao, he don't feel sorry for himself ever, and he can only fight one way, which is the variation of losing. But I mean, he's hard to read, but one way he's high energy. He's not a guy who wants to slow the pace down ever. Why does he? Because high energy is what he does. So that's why he's always in good fights. That's why he's in so much money. That's why he's exciting. That's why he's been so successful. But you can't keep going to the well forever. That's the problem.
Where would a win for Manny Pacquiao put him? You're talking about one of the all-time greats anyway.
Great.
But a win over the number one in the division.
I don't think it's the credit he deserves, actually.
No, I don't either.
I don't know why that is. Well, it may be because of the questions over how he's maintained his excellence for so long, or who knows. But either way, he just...
And he doesn't have an unblemished record like a Floyd Mayweather or somebody like that. He has been knocked out, got knocked out flyweight.
The thing is, though, like, all of us go on, and especially on Twitter, we all go on about an undefeated record means nothing. And it does if you box quality. It does if you're Josh Taylor, because he's boxed quality. But Pacquiao, at the level he's boxed, you can't stay undefeated. And you go, well, yesterday no one cared about undefeated records.
Morales.
You lose the fight, but he's come back and won. You know, and that's brilliant. So I don't think that hinders him at all. He's a Hall of Famer guaranteed now. He's just, the fact he's not in there is because he won't retire.
Yes, because he's not retired yet. Yeah.
And he is, and he was never going to beat Mayweather, whatever happened. Whatever time they box, he was never going to beat him. That's just the styles was never any good for him. Mayweather can slow you down. He's so good, and that was always going to be the problem for him. But apart from that, he was good enough to beat anyone on his day and cause anyone in the world a problem. I don't think he beats some of the great welterweights of all time, but he shouldn't be a welterweight.
No, he shouldn't. Even by his own admission, he can still make 140 now.
Well, he shouldn't even be. I'm arguing about should he be a lightweight? Do you know what I mean? That's what I think. He's tiny. He's my
and he went
size.
He went through from when he was at super featherweight. I mean, he boxed David Diaz at 135, and then he kind of that was it really. It was really a little bit of a pit stop at 135.
Yeah, it was, my man. Yeah.
And he went up, and before you knew it, he boxed De La Hoya. And once he boxed De La Hoya, that was it. He'd gone. But a win over Errol Spence at this stage of his career, 42 years old, inactive, number one in the division. I mean, you're talking about one of the great wins, I think.
Yes, of course,
If he can pull that off, you're talking about one of the great wins in a great career.
We're going about Hopkins. He maintained his brilliance for so long, and how he could be so world
Imagine
class.
we get like a Hopkins Pavlik style performance.
Yeah, but
where he just he just kind of everybody thinks he's done number one the guy in the division, and he just pulls it out. Imagine he does it. It'll be unbelievable.
See, I think the longevity of Pacquiao is more impressive than the longevity of Hopkins, even though Hopkins was older, of course,
because of the style
and the age. Just the bigger fight. It's just you always see
those
that
little fighters they burn out quicker.
Yeah, because every fight's sort of hard because you don't have that natural one punch power that they do at the bigger guys. I think and he's boxed. Hopkins had a great career.
But Pacquiao boxed a better
I'm not picking on Hopkins'
sure.
career to make his better, but yeah, he's had he's boxed brilliant fighters from featherweight on, like really has.
Right, we've got to get going because we've got to get you out of here. So before I let you go, I want to ask what next for Terence Crawford? Where's Crawford in all of this? Because Crawford was talking about, the Crawford-Pacquiao fight has been talked about for the last 5 or 6 years. The money's coming from Dubai. But why do we always listen? It's like the money's coming from the Middle East. I think we should sort of push that to one side for a little bit. But anyway, where does this leave Terence Crawford? You've got
he's got to fight whoever it is. He's got to fight. But I think now, see, you pay a fight a certain amount of money, and that's his marker. So when you say, you got to fight this guy though, so I can't pay you that, then they go, I got 2 million in my last fight. No, you want to pay 800,000. Yeah, but you boxed him your last fight. Now you're boxing this guy who's going to take you 3 rounds. I think you just got to take the hit and fight. Because he's not a young man, by the way. Was he 33?
He's 33, 34, around there, yeah.
So, as good as he is, he'll be out in a minute. He'll be done. And so I think he needs to take a fight, and then maybe Josh Taylor.
I'm not sure what the situation. I think he's
Josh Taylor will take that fight, by the way.
Of course he'd take that fight. 100% he'd take that fight.
I don't mean out of pride. I mean because he'll think, well, that's a big money fight, and also he ain't still young anymore. And he's been inactive.
And Josh Taylor will believe that he can beat Terence Crawford for
and
sure.
He very well might, But yeah, so I think that But I don't think the Spence fight's going to happen at all, ever.
I think the only way that fight happens is if you believe in what you hear with regards to Terence Crawford's contract at Top Rank. That looks like it's coming to an end this year. Yeah. October's been the month that's kind of been bandied about. If after then he goes over to PBC, but you'd think that if he goes over to PBC, they're going to have him go Sean Porter, Danny Garcia, those guys first anyway.
It don't happen because Spence goes on the A side. And you go, why? Can I just beat Manny Pacquiao? And you go, but I'm undisputed this weight.
I think we saw Bomac, who's Terence Crawford's trainer, talking about, we want the Manny Pacquiao fight, we want the Errol Spence fight, but they're 50-50.
And that's ridiculous because Pacquiao's the bigger draw. So Spence is obviously getting less than Pacquiao. Must be getting less than Pacquiao. You have to accept that. But then you don't always take his mantle, but that gives you that gives you a bargaining tool for other fighters, which is going for Spence now.
Mayweather De La Hoya was the same.
Of course it was, yeah. But so you have to. I think Crawford thinks his worth is that much, and I admire his stance. He's one of the best fighters, one of the best pound for pound fighters on the planet, and he goes above Spence in pound for pound rankings, even though he's not the best welterweight, which is weird. But because Spence got a better list of fighters who he's beaten at that weight. But overall, I think Crawford's above him. But you got to be careful he doesn't negotiate himself out of a career. You see fighters like eat their way out of careers. Broner was one of them. He had a Hall of Fame career, Broner, for me. But he just couldn't stop eating. And he's a fool. But Crawford might just negotiate himself out of a Hall of Fame career if he's not careful. And that's the thing. So I don't know. He just needs to fight anybody. and then, forget about Spence. The Spence fight's not going to happen unless he takes less. If Spence beats Pacquiao, which you expect he will,
expect him to, yeah.
then Spence even got more of a bargaining tool. Then I don't need you. Because he still has Porter and all those fighters who really had good big names and people and exciting fights to be in.
Spence could beat him and move up anyway. He's talking about he wants to fight Canelo at 160 one day.
Yeah, well, yeah, I don't see that happening, but still, I understand. Yeah, you can.
But again, you'd want to look up,
and also,
look forward.
you can just keep mentioning names so people forget about you. That's what you got to keep. You don't get frozen out and you don't exist anymore. And I think Crawford's the sort of a character who just where he's come from and the life he's had, that he'll just go stuff the lot of you and I'm gone and walk away. I hope not, because he's a fantastic fighter.
Well, I hope not either. And hopefully we get to see Spence versus Crawford.
Anyway, Josh Taylor, what?
Josh Taylor, unbelievable. Hang on. No problem. Sorry, I always turn my phone off, and then when I turn it on, I've always got loads of people wondering why I can't get hold of me. But anyway, Barry Jones, always a pleasure. Thanks very much for stopping by the Boxing Social podcast. Always a pleasure to have you down here, my friend. Nice to see you.
You too, mate.
Before I let everybody go, please remember that you can download Boxing Social podcast on Apple Podcasts as well as listening on Spotify. Barry Jones. Yeah, Barry Jones knows all of that stuff. But from me, Rob Tebbutt, from him, Barry Jones, thanks very much for stopping by and watching episode 19 of the Boxing Social podcast. We'll catch up with you next time.